Hello, you lovely lot. I've sounded like Mrs. Doubtfire. It's the National Newsmaking Tea and Trails podcast. And I'm the co-host. The co-host, by the way, there's not just one host, there's two hosts. Let's get that in early.
I knew that was coming.
He's the brains, and I'm going to talk about it all the time. So thanks so much for joining us. Thanks to all our patrons and partners too. Who we got? We got Mountain Fuel, Outdoor Active, Velo Forte, Silver, Active Route, the Centurion Running Store, Protein Rebel, Sportshoes.com, Big Bubble Hats, and X Miles. It all part of the gang. Thank you so much to everybody who supports the show. Also, pop over to Summit Crazy if you would like some awesome Tea and Trails merch.
Episode 27, and this week we chat with Lizzie Wraith. The coaches join us again. We bring you more tales from the trails, share our weekly trials and tribulations, and have another fantastic competition to announce. This time, Fawnside Cottages supplying the prizes. Also, we announce our Silver Head Torch winners too. Thanks to Silver and Fawnside Cottages for supporting the show. And yeah, breaking news, Fawnside are a new Patreon partner. Yeah, thanks so much, guys. It was a bit of a curveball. This, I always just visualise nutrition, sports kit. But yeah, Fawnside Cottages, it is right just under the Helvellyn range.
It's quite dramatic up behind the cottages,
yeah, I love
isn't
the pictures. So yeah, if you want to go out and have some Lake District adventures, I've been looking at some Wainwrights over that part of the lakes, which I probably wouldn't normally go to because I'm so obsessed with Bob Graham or Lakeland 100 routes or all county tops. So yeah, I'll definitely be checking it out. And I love tidy numbers, and they're offering £36 off for our patrons, which if you do the maths is pretty much a year's worth of Patreon membership. So it's a great way to support them, support us. And then, yeah, just that one saving also unlocks loads of other perks too. So please, if you can, check out Patreon. How are you doing, co-host?
No, it's too little too late now. That's what I always say to the kids when I lose my shedizzle in the kitchen, normally about 7:30, when I go, no more. You've had supper, you've had dinner, you've had tea, no more Weetabix. It's too little too late. And then they go, oh, I'll put my bowl in the dishwasher. I'm so sorry. It's too little too late. Anyway, I just want to start our little catch up with thank you, everyone. Lots of very concerned people about my mini breakdown on the podcast last week. So thank you very much for all the messages and all the love. Seems my suffering and trauma has inspired the nation, and people love the emotion, Gary. It was
lovely. It was a Facebook cuddle you got. I think, Eddie. It was lovely.
It was lovely, and I'm really bad at social. I'm not really bad, but I choose to very limit my time on social media. So I set those limits on my phone. So just have 15 minutes a day on Facebook and Instagram. So if you send me a message, I will reply, but it might take me a couple of days to get to it because I don't find social media gives me very much. I like the odd bit in there, but there's a lot of that I don't.
Is that why you ghosted me after my TV appearance for a weekend?
Well, I only knew about it because somebody sent me the picture, host of Tea, and I think it was even my dad. What's going on there? Anyway, that's what he wants to talk about. So I'll rattle through my news. Yeah, beginning of the week, we all know you talked to me at the beginning of last week. I did not feel good. It took me a long time to feel better. It wasn't until the weekend that I started varying my diet off beige foods. I literally ate peanut butter and toast and tea for about 4 days. I did not feel good. I didn't feel good in the sun either. And it's quite hot here now. And standing in the playground waiting for the kids to come out, and I'd be like, getting a bit
flashbacks.
Getting a bit of flashbacks. Come on. I did one little run. I did quite a bit of hiking with the dogs around the sort of flattish trail. I kept thinking I'll run, and then I just really didn't feel like it, to be honest.
I'm surprised you did.
I did one run where just happened that my friend called me as I set off for my hike, and I thought, I'll just jog down to get the dogs off the lead onto the trail. And she was chatting to me. So I was like, I'll just jog. And that felt fine. But I didn't really, I always like a complete week off after a race. I have no wish to exercise, really. I don't even like walking the dogs very much. I just like to spend as much time on the sofa as possible. Really important. Yeah. I have no problem doing that, to jump back into it. And it just happened that we had, I know I've been going on and on about how busy the last few weeks are, but it was our last we supercharged last week and the weekend because I knew I wouldn't be training. And I also, it just occurred with really, really busy stuff. We didn't stop, but we knew by 2:00 on Sunday afternoon, all our admin jobs, everything we had to do, birthday parties, they would be done. So we pushed. Bryn and I better top dress training. We were like, come on, keep going. Don't stop. Don't sit down. Next job.
Do you find yourself, sorry, I'll pick up my phone and be distracted by Facebook and then I'll go, no, stop. No,
well, that's why I'm not allowed to, because I only have 15 minutes to have time for that sort of thing. Otherwise I get stuck down a hole, like no time for that. Those the end of last week. So that was really good, actually, just being busy, keeping my mind busy, whirring away in the background. I had a great time crewing for my friend. She was doing a mega race, which actually started another valley over, but it's so long. It came over past our house, just up the road from our house, 130K, 10,000 meters of climbing. And just happened that, she came up past us at about, I think it was about midnight in the end. So it was Friday night. And it's a live trail, which I think it's a French or sort of European tracker anyway. And I tried to get up the sort of top climb where I was going to do a surprise, me and Lindy. We drove up there, but they'd shut the road because the Tour de France is coming and every single road has to be retarmacked for the Tour de France. So I started driving up it, but I was in Bryn's smart electric car and the road was like, they'd like scraped all the time. And I was like, and then it said it closed at 8. And I was like, it was like 7:45. And I was like, suppose normal Eddie would be like, it's fine, I'll ditch the car, I can run, see Beth up here, and then I can run to the next checkpoint. But Eddie's legs post that Southlands, where I was like, I don't trust the downhill. I think I'll be right in the uphill. It's the downhill. Can you imagine? Then Beth would get to the checkpoint waiting for her tailwind, and I wasn't there. So I was like, sensible. I said, Lindy, you've got to turn around. You're not going to get the run in. And she was like,
scowled.
Fuming. So then I came back. So then I just had to watch the tracker, waiting. I started to feel a little bit tired. So
it's late.
Yeah, it was late. It was getting near midnight. Bryn and I we watched, I reckon, 4 episodes of Below Deck. And then I went, that's enough. That I do not feel good about myself. I do not feel good about those people. Let's turn it off. Anyway. Is
it the super yacht where they actually physically sail, or is it?
No, it's a really old series. I think we've done we're also watching the super yacht one but we have to wait weekly for that to come out. So we've gone back to the motor yachts, which are all a bit grubby anyway. Anyway, met Beth at the checkpoint. She was about love crewing, though it's really stressful, isn't it? I feel you don't want to let that person down with the bottles and looking after them, and then off they go. And when I said goodbye to her, she had another 24 hours to go, and she appeared and she's like, I don't feel good. I feel really sick. And I was like, you're fine. I was like, try some. I brought her up some fruit loaf, which she took one bite off. And then when I don't want it, I was like, that was my one bit of fruit loaf.
That was all I've got.
That's all I've got to offer you. You didn't want it, and now it's wasted because you've spat it out and made a lot of fuss. Anyway, gave her a pep talk and tailwind, and off she went. And I was really worried. I went home and I was like, she didn't eat anything. Oh God, I was like, oh my God, that's how Bryn feels about me all the time. But she did it. She did amazing, and she did finish, and she's on our Striver board this week. So I enjoyed it, but it was a late night by the time I got back, and then I had to get up and go and make and serve crepes in a small hut in 30 degrees for 10 hours, Gary. That
sounds dreadful.
How the mighty have fallen. The week before I was attempting a 100-mile race, all glory and honour. And then a week later, I was standing in this hut with crepe and Nutella everywhere. Massive long queues of 10-year-old boys wanting crepes, and oh my God, it was disgusting. And
about chocolate and heat.
And my legs, Gary, they were still quite tired, and after about 8 hours standing up, I was like, oh my God. That's when I think the toe went a funny colour, and I was like, I think that toe's broken. Look, it's gone black. Couldn't see because there was so much crepe mixture anyway. You've got to do these things. You've got to volunteer, haven't you? Give back. As for my thoughts and feelings, I know last week there was some deep emotion, and I've just let that run its course. And I think it's really important to know that it will run its course. Like, obviously last week when we spoke, I was deeply disappointed in myself and upset that I didn't finish it and, all those feelings. But they do go. Well, they don't go, but I think you just I've processed them now. But I'm glad I faced them. I think it's really important to face them. I haven't entered another race, though I've made a few plans.
I think it's healthy, about processing them and you haven't let them go. We're busy people and there's lots of distractions in our lives, so it's quite easy to...
Yes, I could easily have gone, but I didn't. I sat with it, and not going running, I think, helps because you have to sit with it then. You can't hide from it and jump into the next thing. And I've sat with them and I've processed it and I've thought about it more. And actually, often when I say to clients, your initial feelings don't become then your feelings about the race later on. But actually, my initial feelings have stayed the same. And the things that I drew from the race, I feel like, yes, the training went really well. Actually, who's on Facebook who wrote me a very nice conclusion of the
loads
race.
Of people.
All the things that I know I can recover from a massive effort like the spine, but I need to give myself 10 weeks. I can do a block, but then it's important to train towards something different. So not to do like a 200, then another 200. I really enjoyed a change of focus, which I'm going to do again. Now my training was right. We talked a lot about not training at that top end level, and I never went to that top end level, and I was still on it, was still there. And then just about giving yourself a bit of slack, how I prepare for these races. Maybe I can only do one big race a year, and maybe after the spine I should have gone. As much as I love racing, I can't. I need to just do one a year.
Yeah, I wouldn't, it was such a hot day. I maybe wouldn't make that kind of big decision just yet. Maybe roll the dice again, see if you can do more than one a year. It was Lee Bailey, wasn't it? That's it.
Lee Bailey. Yeah, he wrote me a nice. I was like, thanks, Coach Lee. I love what you pulled out from that. So, I'm really glad thanks so much, podcast, for letting me process all that, showing my emotion. I did have to ring mum and dad and go, because dad, obviously, number one podcast fan, bit worried about me. I was like, Dad, I'm fine. You listen to the podcast, but I'm still here. We'll move on. Live to fight another day.
It's a good point, actually. I probably share more on the podcast than I do with my
Rick
dad.
Often comes back and goes, I didn't know. Why didn't you? Or he comes back and gives me a hug. He just walks in and gives me a hug and he's like, been listening to the podcast.
Oh,
it's
bless.
So therapeutic. But also we had an exciting meeting. We're not mentioning it yet, are we? But we had an exciting meeting with potentially another partner, and you read out the stats, and I never even think that actually people are listening. I just think
there's
I'm
a lot of people out
Gary.
there. It's amazing.
There's a lot of people. Anyway, love you all. Right, how are you doing? Gary doesn't want to talk about his struggle so much of juggling everything, but come on, feel free, let it out. Come on.
Oh, well,
Cry, Gary.
You're going to try and make me cry. I'm pretty on the verge of it. Last week, and I think it's been coming for even the week before, I struggled. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, just a complete write-off. And I'm trying not to dwell on it too much because I don't want to use someone else's misery as a positive for me, but the people out there with a bigger struggle than me, they physically can't run. We hear about quite often, we get emails all the time with Brew with the Coaches. People are having a real rough time, and I am having a rough time-wise, but not physically. So I am struggling to fit it all in, but I can run. I am healthy. I'm feeling good in my body. I'm just physically struggling to fit it all in, but the week is. So what I'm doing is basically doing a week's training in 3 days.
But that's often what I do too, because I don't have really weekends and I don't have Wednesdays. True. And then one day we're doing this takes up ages. So basically you're going to have to do your big days over 3 days. I
should mirror my time with when Lisa's not working on her 4 days off, then it spreads my load so much more, and it's easy to do stuff. So if I could, in effect,
do you not look ahead and plan it like that?
Well, no, it's as my work's getting busier. Yeah, I've never really had to do it. It's always been a struggle, but I've managed to do it. But I really think maybe I should plan a 4-day week instead of a 7-day week, and how that works, I'm not 100% sure. Probably a little bit too late for Lakeland 100, but maybe going forward. Depends how long.
We're always learning, Gary. We're always moving forward. The other thing is like a 10-day week as well.
Well, I hear that quite often,
Yeah, and that works for some people as well.
Maybe I could do an 8-day week and then manage it over
2-day week, 1-day week. I mean,
but I did I did get one quality session in. I did my 800s. I think it was 8 times 800, and that was really good. And I found a nice little out and back with a bit of a field in between to do my recovery. And that went really well. Super, super hot, but I loved it. I did the gym with George. So I only did one strength session, which again, we hear quite often on the podcast. Some guests, do none. Some do about 2. People don't go to the gym usually 5 days a week and lift heavy. So I'm okay with that. And I did a nice long run on Sunday, and I kept the miles. They were quite movable miles. I was running quite a lot of it, and I kept the heart rate in that zone 1 just to see what the pace was. And I think it was about 9.5-minute miling over the trail. So I was quite pleased with that. I can talk about nutrition this week. I'm not going to trigger you to...
yes, yeah, it's fine. I had vegetables last night. I'm back on the varied diet, thank God.
But I've been using some of the Talk gels from the X Miles guys. They sent some stuff out. I've never, I'm well aware of Talk as a nutrition brand, but I've never used any of their stuff. And I do rhubarb and custard, which back in my triathlon days, many rhubards and custards have worked their way. I thought, I'll give this a go, but yeah, it was fine. And again, I'm smashing the active route as always. That was really good on my 800s. I listened to another podcast. A listener reached out actually and shared another podcast for me to listen to.
What? People listen to other disgusting.
I know. I wasn't too happy about it.
Delete that listener straight away.
And then on the Vela 40, choose again. So yeah, I feel so privileged that instead of just going to the co-op and buying a bag of jelly babies, I can use proper fuel and proper nutrition. So yeah, as far as the running's concerned, it started, I thought it was going to be bad, but ended up being about 65 miles of running, loads of walking actually with a heavy backpack because I'm going back and forwards to work. I didn't take Rex with me. So yeah, I think I did about 16 miles of walking too. So that was good. I think so all in all over 80 miles. But I've got to say, mentally, it's not sitting well for me as I cast my eyes ahead for the next 6 weeks towards Lakeland 100. So I'm getting my sandbagging in nice. But what can you do? Really, if I have to change my goals.
Well, listen, your biggest goal is to get around Dragon's Back with a smile, enjoy it, not hobble around it, be strong. And you're heading in that direction. The Lakeland 100 is a day out on the trails, running none of these matter if, you lose that, if you're not 10% fitter than you want to be. In some ways, that might be a good thing because you're going to have more resources going into Lakeland 100 and you're going to recover quicker and you're going to be hungry for that Dragon's Back.
Yeah,
I think don't let it, like the emotional stress coming off you, like just
but I'm used to doing another, say, 20 miles a week. That's roughly
does it like that doesn't validate you as a person, Gary? It doesn't matter if you do.
I know.
The biggest thing is the consistency and being healthy. And so you're getting session done, you're getting your long run done, and anything else is a bonus, isn't it?
Well, I think 100%. Even if I just carried on as I'm going, yes, I'll be pretty.
You're doing 99% more than other people.
Yes, I think there's enough. There's definitely going to be enough there so I can complete these events if I have a bit of luck. I don't want any bad luck and trip over. I've got more than enough in the tank to do that, as long as I don't start Dragon's Back race.
But you just have to remember the dials, chat. Remember the stress. When the stress of the work and life and family is higher, you're actually, if you put in that extra 20 miles, you're not going to get fitter because it's the recovery that makes you fitter.
I wonder if my cortisol levels are what they are. I'd love to do a blood test and just see how I'm functioning.
Not good for your skin and your fitness.
Yeah, that's why I take the collagen for the skin, Eddie.
For the skin and my nails. I'm having to start trimming my nails a bit. I need to
I've been biting mine off.
Oh my gosh, this has got to stop. Right, next week. Every time you feel that rise. So you need yoga in your life, Gary. Breathe. Yeah. I'd imagine Gary adding something else to his life now. I think we should.
I'm loving the gym with George though. I really am. We have a little moment together down there. He loved it. We did these. Oh my goodness me. It was like a squat rack, and he lifted the same weight as I did, which he absolutely loved.
Gary. Raise the bar, Gary. Come on.
Heavy flex from George. But my running highlight, which initially it was adding to my stress because I wanted to be involved in this running out of time relay 100%, and it's still going. So if people want to check it out, get involved with that. I was getting some requests to do like a TV interview, which as soon as that was mentioned, my stress
the wrong host to ask. Oh my God. My dream is to say the sentence, I was getting some requests for a TV interview.
People just kept saying, oh, you do a podcast, you're fine. I'm like, whoa. And this is like 100% controlled. Record it, I edit it. I'm really comfortable in this scenario. But the thought of,
well, it's why we don't do other people's podcasts very much, because we don't relinquish control, because Eddie has no filter. So she's not safe for free recording.
So I was pretty stressed out. I had to, I think I said to you, we had a few chats about it. Sometimes you have to do things you're comfortable with. And this, if it was just me kind of serving myself, I would have said no to it 100%. But it is bigger than me, this running out of time relay. So I felt I had to just take a deep breath and do it. But yeah, the relay itself, I started, I basically started off at the Baltic. So people know Newcastle. They'll know the Baltic and the Sage are about 500 metres away from each other.
Are they nightclubs or something?
Oh, no. The Baltic is a centre of contemporary art, and the Sage is a phenomenal music venue. Completely.
They could be nightclubs, couldn't they? Going down Baltic, yeah, always go down Baltic. Not taking coat, just in my vest.
And the finish, actually, they had the finish of the Wall Ultra right on the quayside too. So I was like, oh, what's going on here? But I then ran basically through Newcastle, around the Talmoor. I was initially supposed to do the Talmoor Marathon Park run route, but there was a big event on the Talmoor, so it was closed. Luckily, I had a bit of local knowledge and I could make up the miles, and then headed back to the Sage. And when I picked up my baton, so it was very low key initially. So this is why it took me by surprise what happened later on to a certain extent. I was just looking for a guy with a baton, and there was this random bloke with a running vest on, handed the baton over to each other.
Like the relay baton you used to use at school?
Yeah. But they had two. They had one big symbolic baton, which I saw later on, but initially there was just a little kind of metal baton. Yeah, it was great. But yeah, very sweaty and sticky, so there's a lot of...
Oh God, it's like the creperie all over again.
Yeah. And then I went off Lisa joined me actually. So we thought, oh, great, we'll go for a run together. So Lisa joined me, and then we made our way to the Sage, and we just didn't realise what was going to happen. So as we got towards the Sage, we saw the ITV camera.
Is that when you pushed Lisa out of shot and said,
well,
just wait?
I think she wishes I did, because she really did not want to be on TV. But once we were on camera, we were both running towards the Sage, and then we ran into the Sage.
Did the camera come out? I saw the tight t-shirt. I saw it.
Deep breath. But when you're in the media game, Eddie, you know that they have to restage events. So then, because Lisa was in it once, she had to keep being in it again and again and again. So we had to film ourselves from different angles running into Sage. And then we ran past this orchestra, and then they took some photographs of us all. But because Lisa had been in it once, she found herself in every photo op, apart from the TV interview. I couldn't let her hug that. Hug that too. But so she was horrified. I think the stress shifted immediately from me being really anxious about this ITV.
So you going, Lisa, it's okay. I work in media. I've got this. Look relaxed. Just look relaxed. Imagine everyone's naked and you'll be fine.
But it was good. And luckily, I drew on some of my experience as a crack interviewer. And I was trying to second guess what questions they might ask me, because this was what was stressing me out. Like, literally, they threw me with a question.
Yeah, if they were like, Gary, what are the numbers of climate change? What do you think of the percentage of the intimate temperature of the affinity of the double curd lemon scoop?
Well, quite a deep question. Yes. What was your climate carbon footprint for getting heat a day and stuff like that? Yeah, I didn't know any of that. Well, this is an interesting point, because I am not an activist. I'm not a scientist. I'm a guy who runs and co-hosts a podcast. I'll give you the credit. So yeah, if they hit you with a big question, but I kind of thought they'll ask why, how was it? And I can't remember what the other question was. Luckily, they asked me why, and I coped okay with that. And I got spotted a couple of times the next day on my local run, running around Wingate with Rex. I saw you on the TV last night, Gary.
I love it. And then did you say, now go to the podcast, Patreon, sign up.
Check us out.
Cost of a cup of coffee. Is that when they were like, cut?
Good. Yeah. I wonder, actually. And I made a silly mistake. I put my green runner's badge on my arm, and they filmed me from the other side. So I missed me green runners.
All that media training, training.
I needed two, but that would have been wasteful, wouldn't it, to have two of them? But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Went from being pretty stressed out.
Always the things that you dread and you get a bit nervous about, they're never actually the thing. They normally tend to be quite enjoyable, and then it's some other things which you think will be easy, which are horrendous. I'm so proud of you. If anyone has the clip, how do you get clips of that sort of thing? Will you be on YouTube? Somebody must have it.
Well, I couldn't find it. I haven't recorded, and all my family haven't recorded too.
Oh, well, can you not record it on your phone and then send it to me?
I could do.
Just want to see you looking awkward in front of that camera, doing a heavy flex, slightly sweaty. I mean, it's no different from how I see you every week.
Yeah.
But I'm really proud of you. You did that.
Oh, thanks,
you did it for us, for the environment, and the podcast.
But yeah, if you want to get involved, I'm pretty sure you can still get involved. So check out, I think it's running-out-of-time.com.
Before we jump into our Brew with the Coaches this week, we want to give a shout out to one of our coaches on Brew with the Coaches, Dr. Rebecca Can. She finished the West Highland Way in what must have been some pretty testing conditions, and she was very nervous about it. Her first foray into super ultra long distance, and she finished West Highland Way in 29 hours, 19 minutes and 40 seconds.
Oh, crushed it. Brilliant.
Crushed it. Well done. We can't wait to hear all about it. Let's hear Rebecca in action, what we got this week, Gary.
Nikki Powley got in touch. A few people actually got in touch about training as the weather gets warmer, and it seems like such a great time to share our coaches' knowledge. Yeah, Nikki's question was, do you have any advice for training and racing as the weather gets warmer?
Nikki Powley asked, do you have any advice for training and racing as the weather gets warmer? I'm very used to the northeast weather and have no problems being out in the drizzle and cold over winter. I know it's not warm for most, but once it hits 16 degrees plus and is humid, I find my heart rate and perceived effort is higher on easy runs, and I struggle in races. The nutrition plan that works for me over winter just doesn't happen, as I usually feel more nauseated on long runs in the summer. I know I need to adapt, but end up running mostly early or later in the day due to work, and then race day, the heat gets to me. Any tips? And along the same lines, we've got a question from Steve Felby, who says, would be interesting to know about heat in the summer. As each summer, the UK seems to be getting hotter. Being a Hong Kong-based runner who pops over to Blythe, the mighty Blythe, a couple of times a year, I find it interesting the different approaches. Here, we have to deal with 30 to 35 degrees with 100% humidity. And he says that he often goes out for a run, and even when doing a short session, comes home like he's just come out of the shower, nice, and quite often loses anything from 3 to 5 kgs in weight, even though he tries to put in at least 1 litre of fluid an hour. So we've kind of mixed those two questions together, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to train for the heat first, and then we're going to call on our resident medic to then what to do in the heat, how to react to the heat, and how to stay safe. Trish, let's start with you. What sort of things do you advise your clients to do if they're looking to either race in the heat or really now, just even in the summer?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of training in the heat, in the military environment and also in a running environment as well. So I lived in Cyprus for 2 years and would train, in the summer. It would be exceptionally hot. In terms of my background, I'm quite kind of clued up in terms of training for it. What I would say for clients is the reality is training in the summer in hot conditions is going to be very, very different, and you can't have the same perceptions of what it's going to be. It will be different. So you need to change your mindset in terms of what that looks like. For training in hot weather, you've got to be taking on a lot more fluid, and it's all tied in with your effort level. So if you're the type of session that you're doing is going to determine how quickly you're burning through that water, and you need to build up to that gradually. So I would say what I say to my clients is to try, if you're, so let's say you're doing a normal, let's say 20-mile route, ideally you want to kind of loop that so that you're coming back. Ideally, maybe that might be 5 miles for you. For me, that could be 10 miles, or if I'm not taking X amount of water. So you've got to almost have a get out of jail card for part of the route, so that if it's not going your way, you know you're going to be able to hit water at certain locations. So in terms of training, you've got to change your routes potentially. In terms of pace, you've really got to look at your pace, look at what you're trying to achieve out of that session. So if it's a zone 2 session that you're trying to like an easy run, your perceived effort is key. I know a lot of people will try and go on a pacing plan to set times, and I would say forget that. Forget your set times. Trust your body, trust how you feel. Go in terms of your breathing and how your body is responding. For longer runs, I would say you've got to stay in that zone 2 bracket, and particularly for races. With running in hot weather, running hard, you're going to get much less time out of that than you would do in a winter session. So let's say if I was going to go and run a tempo session, I might be able to sustain that in the winter for X amount of time. The reality is in the summer, it's probably going to be less before you reach that critical point where your body isn't going to be able to sustain that, and your body will increase very, very quickly then in temperature. And once you hit that point, that critical point, there's no going back from that. So you've got to make sure you stay in that zone, that appropriate zone for you for that heat training. It might be much, much slower than you're used to, but that's what you've got to do. Making sure you've got the right kit, so making sure you've got your sun cream on, making sure you've got your hat on. If it's a long hat that's going to cover the back of your neck, little things like that are going to make a difference. A lot of people like to wear vests, whatever works for you. I tend to say try and wear a t-shirt, because actually that sun exposure on your skin, even if you're wearing sun cream, it does make a big difference. So if you can wear a t-shirt, a lot of people will try and wear vests. If you can wear a t-shirt for the longer days, again, that's what I would recommend, but it's personal preference in regards to that. In regards to training as well, what I generally say is try and train in the mornings or the evenings where it's generally cooler. If you can't do that, you've then got to try and look at getting in a gym, getting on the treadmill, particularly with your harder sessions. You want to be doing your harder sessions either in those cooler periods in the morning or in the evening, or again, doing your hard sessions in the gym on the treadmill. You've also got to look at in terms of how your build up is for the week. So when I was training in hot weather, I would try and do my easy sessions out in the day. So I'd start adapting to that heat. My body would be adapting to going out and working in that heat. I would start that adaptation, and it wouldn't feel so bad. But my hard sessions would be done in cooler environments, so in the morning or in the gym. And there's another reason why you should do that. It's because as you build up during the week, it's progressively taking its toll. So if you're going to do all of your sessions outside, you're giving a lot more from your body than what you would do, in terms of, just saying like how much water you're going to lose, how much electrolytes you're going to lose, etc. So if you can split that into gym work and outside work, that will enable you to be able to push for longer and sustain higher mileage, higher efforts during the week. So that would be my advice in terms of training in hot weather. But the bottom line is you've got to go out there and you've got to do it, and you've got to adapt, and you've got to experiment with it. But you've got to do that in a controlled environment. So having a loop, like I said, is a really good way to do that, because then for example, how much water you're taking at a certain effort, at a certain temperature over a certain distance. So that's a really good way to understand how your body is going to perform on race day.
So Trish, you mentioned about heart rate and RPE. That I find the problem with when you're running in the heat is that I think actually if you've got access to a heart rate monitor, it's a really good idea to wear it, because you can think I'm running really easy, but actually that heart rate zone 2 is actually at the top of heart rate zone 2 and very quickly goes to zone 3 as soon as there's a little incline, or you're running a bit, you're suddenly in a bit of a hotter, more exposed place. So perhaps if you've got access to a heart rate monitor, and this is when it's a good idea to train quite a bit with the heart rate because you get to know what your easy heart rate is. And often I say, don't be a slave to that heart rate, but actually this might be a case where actually, especially in the first, if you're doing a long run in the heat, is to spend the first 90 minutes right at the bottom of that zone 2 and keeping it so you can get the fluids in. And then as the sort of cardiac drift starts and you start getting hotter and hotter, you've been at the bottom, so you've got somewhere to go, rather than if you start at the top end of your zone 2, which should feel super easy anyway, you've got nowhere to go and it quickly dips then into zone 3.
And again, I think it's what works best for the individual. I tend to think 100% always go with feel. Like I never look at my heart rate.
My thought was more like teaching people how that feels in relation to that. If you're not sure, get your heart rate monitor on and see if it reacts to like how you're feeling. Because I think that's where lots of people go wrong in the heat, especially at the start of a long race or run. They think they're going easy and then especially.
I mean, for me, it's I always say do the breathing test. Like if you can breathe through your nose, then if you can't breathe through your nose, you're going too hard. But again, that's not for everyone. So I mean, whatever works for you as an individual. So if it's your heart rate in terms of helping you get used to that feel, that's great. Again, just do whatever works for you. But the bottom line is you've got to be in that easy bracket and then build from there once you've got an understanding of how your body is responding and what your body needs at each time.
I love the idea of doing hard sessions if you can inside or in the early parts of the days or in the evening, and then just doing recovery and easy runs outside. Russell, Dragon's Back champion, how have you coped with the heat, and what's your sort of advice of training to run in the heat?
I've been lucky enough to have been running for 30 years now, and I've had to come up against heat problems a lot. Experience that springs to mind is London Marathon 2018. It was the hottest marathon on record. And the problem was not the heat. It was 24 degrees. That's hot for a marathon. With the tarmac as well, it seems to radiate more heat. But the problem was that winter we'd had the beast from the east. So we'd all been doing our long runs in -2 or blizzards. And especially in North Wales, we were getting really hot. So nobody got any heat acclimatation at all. And then we got thrown into, it was literally that weekend, the temperature just went up 20 degrees. There was a lot of ambulances. There were a lot of problems. There were a lot of people just running through. And I have to say, it was mainly guys who are having those problems, just refusing to back off the pace. I was in great shape. I wanted to run a PB. I just was like, I'm going to ignore this and bulldoze through. And I hit some kind of a massive wall and ended up just traipsing home like a sorry mess because I didn't listen to my body. Really agree with what Trish says. Heart rate is great in terms of training and you can use it and it's a great starting place. I often do feel like you should try and phase off it to be able to feel for yourself, but it is a great opportunity to understand initially what zone 2 is. But in a race, your heart rate is just all over the place anyway, because you've got adrenaline, you've got caffeine, you've got the heat, you've got all sorts of crazy stuff going on. And so it really wasn't helping me. And I would, say first thing is, just acclimatizing and understanding how important that is. And I didn't. And I've had lots of instances since where I've gone out too hard in the heat, not respected it, and not listened to my body and not understood the implications of that, and then just come down so hard like a ton of bricks. So I don't do that anymore. I've got a lot better at listening. And there are RPE messages that get sent to your body, but I find with heat, they get scrambled and it's a different kind of problem. You don't always feel like you're overheating. Weird stuff goes on. Sometimes I feel cold. Just understanding, I think of it like I'm in a cockpit and all the dials are just spinning around and you don't know what's going on anymore. Do you know what I mean? Do you get that? So I'm like, okay, when that's happening. So actually this Saturday we had a race called Welsh Castles Relays and it was 26, 27 degrees, a lot of people collapsing and ending up in ambulances. I ran it last year and it was a half marathon. I ran it 5 minutes faster. And there was a big ego hit for me to have to run this race 5 minutes slower. But I was like, I'm going to end up in an ambulance if I don't slow down. And I was lucky enough to have seen those signs before, like, oh yeah, this is what's happening. So for me, like Trish says, a lot of it is breathing. I have a breathing pattern that I stick to, and it's tied to my steps: 2 steps in, 2 steps out. I breathe in, 2 out, 2. And if I can't do that anymore in a race environment, I'm like, okay, I'm out of control here, and I need to slow down, and I need to take my pace down from 5-minute 20 miling to 6-minute miling until I could feel comfortable. I had to slow it right down. And that it's just accepting that the heat can do that to you, and it's better to get through the race and finish. Your pace is going to suffer. It's just not optimal for humans to run at full pace, full performance in the heat. It's just accepting that quickly. So there's a guy, Callum Hawkins. I would definitely recommend looking him up. He's a Scottish marathon runner. So Scotland, obviously, they're not bred, and they're not like Kenyans. They don't deal with the heat very often. And he went and did Gold Coast Marathon in Australia, super hot. And he went out at pace, tried to do the stubborn machine, and he ended up in a heap on the floor. It was really dangerous. He got carried off in the hospital. He was winning the race when he collapsed. And he learned a lot from that. And actually a lot of science has come out about that exposure to heat. So he would spend time in a sauna, and he would actually spend time like training on a treadmill with full kit on, and even have like heaters in his garage. And like Trish said, and you, Eddie, just lots of zone 2 work. And he came 4th in the Doha Marathon, which was just as hot. And
that is hot.
Absolutely, he did incredible just from lots and lots of exposure to that, what's it called? That climatic strain or something like that.
Yeah.
Really
I think one of the problems lots of people listening will be thinking the problem is we don't have that regular heat in which we can acclimatize all the time, and we don't want to have so what can we do when the heat suddenly strikes and we're not acclimatized? And I think we're all pulling out the biggest thing that you have to do is slow down. It all becomes about a finish over pace. You almost want to turn everything off, slow down, and just manage yourself. And the slowest people, this is when, if you are normally a happy back of the pack runner and that's where your place is, you are going to thrive in this because you are comfortable at that pace and you are going to just keep on running that. So I think, the biggest thing, we're not going to be as heat acclimatized as we would like to be, is to start off slower and just be prepared that you're going to get slower, and that day is going to be about a finish over a time. And sometimes that's really how we see, half the field won't be able to do that, and it might not be. It might also be, don't be afraid to go, do you know what? I'm not ready to race in the heat, so I'm not going to run in this heat. We don't have to be heroes. So if you think, I've not run in 30 degrees, or I do not do well in the heat. I know I don't do well in the heat. There's nothing, it's almost a braver decision to go, I'm not actually going to run that race because it's hot. I'm not going to enjoy it to start off with, and I'm not ready, and I don't think I need to. I'm going to live to fight another day. So let's move on to nutrition. What we can do in the heat. How would we change our nutrition plans?
Just real quick. Dragon's Back, days 1 to 3, really hot. Luckily enough, I'd read a study on how carbohydrates binds to H2O. And if you can get some sugars into your drinks, and obviously the electrolytes, get some energy drinks, and it seems to be a more complete way to hydrate where the water can pass straight through. Obviously, Becky will understand this way better than I do, but I felt that really did help. Where if I actually just put something in my drink, I felt like I was hydrating better. That was a really quick one that anyone can do quite easily, and that really helped me a lot.
Matching that pace to the nutrition is absolutely key. Like we started off talking about slowing down. If you haven't slowed down, you're then not going to be able to get your nutrition in, and that's when the dials are going to start the spinning. And so slowing down will help the gut absorb that nutrition as well. And like you said, I think during the hottest parts of the day, changing your fueling to what it might be for the first couple of hours, maybe looking at eating solids if your race starts at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., preloading with some solids where perhaps you might start more on gels and then move to solids, being really flexible with your plan so that you might go, actually, I'm going to, while it's cooler, I'm going to actually try and get my nutrition on with a bit more solids, and then I'm going to move to fluids during the day when the tummy's going to go, I just want to lie down. And then when it starts getting cooler. So being quite flexible and having lots of different options in your plan, but definitely being prepared and having a nutrition drink that you can stomach, which has got electrolytes, or you've got salt taps with you and has got energy in as well. This is when I think planning and experimenting with different nutrition is key to success in a hot rate. And you guys have got no excuses, because we've got 1,100 discount codes for every single person that makes nutrition over on Patreon, so you can experiment. Trish, what are your ideas for nutrition in the blazing sun?
So from experience, I mean, in terms of my own running and from what I've seen with other people, it's quite difficult for people to eat in the heat and run. So I always, from myself personally, I try and go with stuff that's very, very easy to get down. So again, that's carbohydrates in your drinks, and which I think is an absolute win. You know, it's in terms of when your body is working in heat, it is working so hard. Everything is strained. The stress on the body from heat is something that you just don't account for. So anything you can do to help the gut, you know, get that energy in as efficiently as possible is a massive win. So personally, I'm all for drinks. I use that, and gels. And you know, me personally, I use Velafort chews because they're quite easy and I don't have to chew them. It's really hard to chew.
Just to the Veloforte chews, having just done a race in the heat, if you chop them up into so you've got the square and then you chop the square into 4, you don't even need to, because I was finding
pop them like pills.
You can pop them like a pill, and then you can chug them with I use Tailwind Chaser. And
Tailwind Chaser.
You know, when you get so hot, then chewing becomes you end up at the back of your mouth for 3 hours. There's still that chew. So if you know that it's going to be hot, try just snipping them up into little kisses, you can call them. And,
Eddie's Velafort kisses. I'll remember that.
I'll share those out. I'm not ashamed. I'm not shy. Yes. Sorry, Trish. Yes. Keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen guys on races before with some proper solid food there and just choking on that food because they haven't got the saliva to chew and get that food down, and that becomes a massive effort. So I would say just stick with
super simple carbs.
And again, doing that, when you're training for heat, doing that training loop of every 5 miles. I mean, 5 miles is a good one because you can really look at, or if you're working Ks, let's say 10K, for example, just doing that loop, what you've had on that 10K loop, what you're
It's also a really good distance, isn't it? Because most checkpoints are going to be roughly an hour to 2 hours, an hour and a half, maybe.
Yep, see, I'm all over this. Not my first rodeo. It's just, it balances really, really well in terms of for training. So yeah, definitely reduce you will have to change your nutrition. Like for example, when I was training for winter stuff, I want much more solid food. Like when I get into a checkpoint, I want a proper meal, like a proper, heartwarming.
Now I'm looking for something heartwarming in this.
I want something heartwarming, like just get it down. I want my casseroles or my stews.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare your spine nutrition pack to your Dragon's Back day 2, they're going to be totally different, aren't they?
Massively different. And when you're running, it's so much harder in hot weather to digest that food. So I'm 100% for minimizing chewing and just getting it down in the most efficient way with your nutrition.
Rebecca, let's bring you in. Where's the science on this nutrition? Are we right? Are we making sense with our Veloforte kisses? And
I think it makes complete sense, doesn't it? I think so much of this will be physiological, but also mental as well. It is just that ability to chew, lack of saliva, all of those things are sort of physical and mental, aren't they? So however you can get calories in the easiest format is gonna pay dividends, isn't it? I think obviously we can talk a little bit about hydration separately, but certainly hydration in the heat even more important than it is normally. But there's some important things to say about it as well. You can't really cheat heat illness by being overhydrated, and you can actually run into more issues. And you can't sort of pre-overhydrate either. So even if you go in and you think, oh, I'll just drink extra before the race and it'll last, it doesn't work like that.
Like a camel.
Yeah, exactly. So those are sort of common mistakes people will make, that if they just drink a bit more, they can carry on a bit more, and it doesn't necessarily help. It obviously helps us with our sweating and our ability to sweat and dissipate heat, but you can't sort of get your way around it. But certainly liquid calories, I think, are really important, but it's just having an eye on just how much you are drinking, and wanting to avoid overhydration and hyponatremia, because obviously you're losing salt as well. So combined sort of glucose, electrolytes, as well as the water.
Planning as well, like planning to wait, if you are doing an ultra, like a mountain ultra, where you haven't got access to fluid, you've got an hour and a half to 2 hours between a checkpoint, so you've got to go into that checkpoint, sort yourself out, take your time, rehydrate, but then also plan. I would definitely say anything above like 20 degrees, really, you want to take an extra bottle, even if the mandatory kit's only a litre. You take what I was doing on Saturday was I was filling up, making sure my bottles were, obviously they were like strained dry by the time I got into the checkpoint. The nipple had been sucked off, but then I was filling those up, but then I was taking another bottle, and I would work through the bottle I was holding first. So I sort of like trying to take like half an hour for each bottle. The temptation is to guzzle it as well, but in the heat, you have got to try and be like, you suddenly feel, you get really hot, you're like, just drink, and being really steady and trying to make those bottles last. Because also the last thing you want to do is get to your 3 miles from the checkpoint and you've got no fluid. So trying to get to that place where you're sipping and it's just a constant drip, rather than guzzling half a bottle because you suddenly feel really thirsty. So treating yourself like a toddler in the ultra, of like just sipping, taking your time, rather than then downing a bottle and having so much fluid to then absorb as well. Rebecca, what's your take on fruit? Because I wanted a lot of fruit in the heat, but I don't think that came up very quickly when I tried, because it's quite acidic, isn't it?
It is, but I think the best thing, I did the Devil of the Highlands race when it was one of the hottest races they'd ever had in 2019, and that bit of watermelon a few miles from the end was just that was that heartwarming. Nice. in the opposite, in the mental sense, not warming. So I think, again, it really comes down to what you can stomach, and some fruits are going to be a bit acidic and are probably going to be upset your stomach a little bit, but I think if there's ones that you can stomach normally and you want, then again, that's anything you can get in calorie wise is going to be positive. So I don't think necessarily avoid it for a sort of physical reason, as long as it doesn't sort of, like orange juice, for example, that's really acidic, isn't it? So I wouldn't do citrus, I wouldn't do that sort of thing. But I would say things like, watermelon, apples, anything that you really fancy that have got some liquid to it, you can just chew them again easier. So there's no problem with saliva if you're having a bit of watermelon or other types of melon or whatever. So those sort of wetter fruits are going to help, aren't they? So I wouldn't say there's a reason to avoid it unless you're particularly prone to sort of acidity, indigestion from that sort of thing.
You can always try. Your stomach will soon tell you, won't it, if you don't want something. Shall we move on now, Rebecca? I know you've got some top tips for us of actually coping with the heat, what's happening to our body in the heat, what we can do, what are the signs that we can look for, because us as ultra runners, we've all done it. We will push ourselves to collapse, basically, when we see it out every weekend at different races. So what are the sort of, maybe should we start with the symptoms that we should be looking for?
What we've got to understand, that when we get overheated, it's our brain that's going to be suffering. So our brain, our homeostasis for the human body is really reliant on quite a narrow bandwidth of temperature. It doesn't like to be too hot, doesn't like to be too cold, so it's a narrow bandwidth. And when you start to stray outside of that either end, you're going to run into problems, and you're going to run into problems mentally. And with heat stroke, particularly, heat stroke is where your body temperature goes above a certain level. We normally say 40 degrees, and you've got some attendant symptoms, usually to do with your brain. So you feel dizzy, or you feel confused, or speech is affected, all of those sorts of things. And then, so that's pretty clear cut when people get to that sort of level. So when they've got definite exertional heat stroke, then it's usually quite clear that they're unwell. And we've talked, other people have mentioned symptoms already, things to do with they're not able to sweat anymore, or they feel cold, paradoxically. And that's because our brain can no longer make sense of those messages that we're getting. So it's telling us we feel cold when we actually are very hot. And the converse happens when you've got hypothermia. Some people start to take clothes off when they're hypothermic because they feel too hot. So all those messages absolutely are, the dials in the cockpit absolutely are whirring. It's not giving us the correct information. So we can't act on it because our body's not telling us the right thing. So it's pretty clear cut when it gets to that level. But then more of what we see is sort of heat exhaustion, which is the next level down, where people have got some symptoms and they are overheated. So again, their body temperature has sort of gone above that nice parameter that we like to work within. And that's when you start to feel more sort of a bit sick, dizzy, lethargic, weak, fatigue, all those sorts of things. All of the symptoms that you can normally get in an ultramarathon anyway. So that's the difficulty, is working out what is due to heat and therefore what is putting you at risk of going into the previous category of heat exhaustion, exertional heat stroke, and what is just exhaustion because of a bit of heat, but also because you're in the middle of an ultra. And it's that bit that I think you can work on. And that's where you've got an intervention point. When someone goes so far to the point that they've into exertional heat stroke, it's sort of too far gone to be able to rectify that. They just need to stop, and they need some active cooling and intervention. But most of what we're going to see are people who are a little bit overheated, and we can hopefully intervene with that. But by far and away, the biggest thing that we can do is slow down or stop in the shade and stop and cool down, because our body is producing heat. That's the problem. So yes, the sun is on us, but actually it's the fact that we're working and producing heat is causing the problem. Okay,
you feel like you're internally exploding from the inside out.
Exactly.
You feel like your whole this is also raw for me. Your whole skin is on fire. You feel like like in a cartoon, a ball of flames just very slowly moving along a trail.
Exactly. So unfortunately, yes, it's heat production is the issue, and therefore needing to slow down and stop. And as I say, what can we do in that situation? Essentially, pace is the absolute key thing. And from what we know about people who end up in extremis, it's the people who push through those symptoms, push through those early warning signs, and carry on producing that heat, and then just can't cool down without active help. And obviously, Trish's experience in the military. Obviously, I work in the military as well, and so we've got lots of relatively recent examples of where this has come badly wrong, and it's very much that sort of mindset of I'm going to carry on, and that's the biggest enemy here. Really, is that thinking I'll just drink something, I'll just eat something, and I'll be okay. It's not quite as simple as that. That sort of mentality of wanting to continue at all costs is what eventually will undo people, because you just continue to produce that heat. So recognition, slowing your pace down, stopping, having a rest in the shade, trying to cool down, that sort of thing.
Would there be a space at checkpoints to take people's temperature? Would that be a point? Because often I would have been going on Saturday, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. And probably if you took my temperature, Rebecca would have been like, get in there. You're out of here, Eddie.
So we've got West Highland Way coming up. It depends when this recording goes out, but we've got West Highland Way coming up this weekend, and it's likely to be hot. And in Scotland, we don't often encounter heat to the level where it has much of an impact. But certainly we are looking at exactly that sort of plan, because checking someone's temperature, it's an objective measure. This is what your body temperature currently is. Therefore, we need to make some interventions to try and bring that down a little bit. And it's not always the case that if you're hot, you're definitely going to have an issue. But, some people can tolerate it a little bit better than others. But it's an objective marker to say your body is starting to go to the absolute top limit of what it can sustain. And that's sort of 39.5, that sort of temperature. Exactly the same thing happens in children, for example, when they're babies and they have febrile convulsions. That's when their temperature's gone above that level that they can sustain. So temperature does give us that early warning sign And I would say all races should have access to be able to check people's temperatures when they're putting on races in the summer, because it's an easy thing that you can do, and it's an easy thing that you can then persuade somebody that they do need to stop.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking. Temperature's 40.1. You know, if you're a toddler, you'd be about to have a febrile convulsion. Now you're at a heat stroke. So let's sort of, step things.
And it's a
back.
life-saving tool. Like it's life-saving, like ultimately as well. You know, that's it's a very easy thing to do to make a huge difference, isn't it?
Yeah, it takes 2 seconds, stick it in your ear, and it's that's a good.
Glad you said stick it in your ear, because that was my next question. I was going to be like, how can you take a mouth one oral, or do we need to go
just in the
Trish
ear?
Wouldn't mind, she'd be straight in there. Come on, let's get this done.
And the ear's quite close to the brain, so it gives you an idea of what's going on inside your body. But yes, when we're talking about studies and core temperatures and things like that, they use rectal thermometers. We don't put those into races. Like, that's not going to be accessible to any medical team, really, in most races.
It might be. Would it be useful if you're training for the heat and you're going to do a long run to check your temperature? Maybe like if you're doing like laps, like Trish said, and you said you start to feel hot, to sort of see what happens to your temperature.
I think it would be really helpful if anyone's got. Most people with kids have got some type of thermometer device. Okay, yeah.
And then you go, you can go to school. Thank God.
It used to. We all got them in COVID because it was like, do I need to do a COVID test? No, it's 37.9. I don't need to do one. So yeah. So if you've got one of those at home, stick it in your kit, put in your crew kit, and someone can just check. Even if you're checking it yourself as part of the race, it can just be a sign to say, actually, I do need to go and discuss that with the first aid at that checkpoint.
I think that's a really good idea.
I don't like to give people more things to obsess about, but because that's never healthy, but it's probably a useful thing just to stick in your car.
And as runners, we're not going to do it ourselves because it would mean someone was going to tell us to stop. But as a crew member, when if you start to think you might, that they're not looking right, or just to reassure yourself, that we're managing the heat, we're keeping our runner cool.
There can be benefits, and personally, I find that really helpful. Like when it really sucks and it feels horrible, heat training, if you do it right and you're really careful and you train in zones 1 and 2 and you hydrate properly, humans tend to be able to respond to that and improve and adapt. And so just personally, just changing it around in my head from it being a negative, horrible thing to, well, if I get out of here and it cools down, or we're in a heat wave in the UK and it cools down, there can be benefits that you carry from that heat training. Certainly, in terms of altitude, you can get non-responders, but generally it seems that humans are better at responding to heat, and they have adaptations that can take place. And I think there's something to do with plasma in the blood. So just framing it in that way, if you have to train in the heat because of work or lifestyle.
Yeah, we've rather framed it in a doom and gloom, haven't we?
Yeah, well, there can be benefits. I mean, probably,
and we do adapt quite quickly, don't we?
Yeah, quicker than altitude can take 3 weeks.
3 to 5 days, is it, Rebecca, that you can start heat adaptation?
The sort of wilderness medical guidelines, they're suggesting no less than 8 days, and if you can heat train for sort of 10 to 14, that's probably the best, and it's sort of 1 to 2 hours a day.
3 for us guys then, and then 8 days for
So but that means just over a week you can bring about some improvement, and then that improvement does last a period of time. Conversely, if you have a significant heat illness, your susceptibility then lasts as well. So trying to avoid getting into that situation is important, and it's something we might need to talk about later. But yes, so you can certainly train and you keep the adaptation for a period. But if you tip into problems, then your susceptibility remains for a period, but then it should go back to its normal baseline.
Oh, okay.
But there is some evidence to say that. So if you had one race that went badly for heat, you probably wouldn't want to be doing another one in the heat in the very soon afterwards.
Okay, not forever. I was like, oh no, I'll never be able to run in the heat again.
And also, it's then looking back into see if you had any inherent susceptibilities as well. There are some medications people take. There's certain things that make more susceptible in the first place as well. So you'd want to look at all of that if you ended up with issues. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about.
Can I just say? I'll just say 2 things in terms. We're going on and on.
No, everyone's got such good stuff. Keep it coming. I love it.
Just in terms of some top tips from experience of symptoms that people can see and recognise. So my two top tips in terms of recognizing symptoms are generally when people are tipping over that edge, sometimes their hearing will go, and it'll go quite sort of blocked hearing. And sometimes you get like a ringing as well. So it feels like your ears are blocked and it's like a ringing. And that can be a good indicator from what I've seen of people before. The number one thing, though, I think you start to see, and you can see that when people are getting to that point, is that their skin starts to go grey. And I've seen this in everyone I've ever seen who's suffered in terms of dehydration or heat illness. Their skin has gone grey, and they get very, very clammy. So clammy grey skin. And those are two things that you can see and talk and get from a person straight away if you're starting to, or even yourself, if you're starting to be unsure about heat illness. Those are
Can we call this 2 top tips? Can we do that? Can we have that?
Trish's 2 top tips. Just put that out. That's the podcast for the week. Done. That is great advice. How do we, Rebecca, what would you say? What can we do to cool ourselves down if we feel ourselves starting to tip? Where where are the places on our body that are the great receptors to cool down? What sort of things can we do when we get to checkpoints to cool down?
So at a checkpoint, if you can find some shade, clearly just getting out of the sun, that's first and foremost, get out of the heat source if you can. So that's the easiest thing to do. And then if you've got access to cold water or ice, that sort of thing, putting it in areas where you've got big blood flow, so big blood vessels. So when we're actively trying to cool people down, we will be looking at things like armpits, groin, and things around your neck and that sort of thing. People do have a tendency to sort of tip water over the top of their head. It might make you feel a bit better, but it's probably not going to actively cool you for very long. So we sort of target the major vessel points, because what you want to do is cool the blood as it circulates and as it returns to the body. So those are the areas that we would normally suggest. But anything you can do to sort of aid that evaporation, so wetting your clothing, wetting your hair, they do help. And also then if you're again sat in the shade, if you've got an amenable crew member, they could lightly fan you with a towel or a palm leaf, like so Cleopatra type style. So things like that, any sort of airflow. So airflow combined with water, it leads to evaporation. That water leads to cooling. So it's the combination of those two things. But certainly just getting out of the heat and sort of wetting things if you're really
Would you
dry.
say cover the skin? So running in a vest is a bad idea. Be better to run in a long sleeve.
You want to avoid getting sunburn first and foremost. So if you require to cover up to avoid sunburn, then cover up, definitely. I personally don't like to have like my shoulders exposed, so I tend not to run in vests because I just feel like that makes me feel quite hot.
It's
so
such a big surface area too.
It is, and all this sort of area is all then exposed. So I would say yes, tend to cover up, primarily to avoid sunburn, because that will be a definite enemy that prevents sweating. And if you're going into a multi-day event, for example, if you've got really bad sunburn on day one, that's going to be a nightmare from a heat illness perspective, let alone just the pain perspective. So because that skin, there is evidence to say once you sunburn, that again, you just don't sweat as effectively. So prevention of sunburn is important. Certainly for multi-day events, I would say cover up. You can always, arm sleeves, people can roll them up, roll them down. People put ice in arm sleeves, all those sorts of things as well will hopefully subjectively make you feel cooler and objectively sort of avoid that sunburn. Yeah.
I think as well in the heat, if you feel like you're actively managing it, you sort of twist the dial a little bit back to, I'm back in a little bit of control. I'm cooling myself down. It's sort of like keeping the brain reassured that you're still functioning. And I think as well, if you're crewing someone as well, if you see your runner actually trying to cool themselves down and going through their process in the checkpoint, you know that, okay, it's when they're sort of like not, and those sort of processes start getting missed, that you know, okay, we need to. But I never thought about actually the groin and the armpits. I was always a back of the neck cooling person, but actually that's another good tip if you're going to take some time at the checkpoint. Whack some ice on the old.
That's it. Yeah, big areas where there's big blood vessels. So yeah.
Thank you guys so much for all your heat tips. That's amazing. Hope that's helpful. And if you've got any more comments or questions, fire them away to us. I don't think there's much more we could talk about in that subject, but there'll always be something, and there'll always be learning, always improving. But I think the biggest thing to pull away is just to slow down, take your time and enjoy the scenery rather than letting it flash by if it's a hot day, and stop for an ice cream.
It's so tricky, isn't it, with races, maybe not now this time of year, but maybe like an April marathon where you train through the winter and then you hit a hot day, or vice versa. Maybe you're doing an autumn marathon or autumn race, and or even a race that takes so long, you go from red hot to freezing cold. It's super tricky. This week we are joined by Lizzie Wraith. Lizzie recently won the UTS Snowdonia 100K. I enjoyed sharing the mics with Lizzie, working parent, juggling life and still performing at a high level. Very inspiring. Hi, Lizzie. Thanks for joining us today. Fresh from topping the podium, the UTS Snowdonia 100K and a Dragon's Back race podium finish back in 2015. I bring that up because, fingers crossed, we have a bit of time to chat about the Dragon's Back race. We ask all our guests, first of all, though, where are you? What's the view from your window? And have you been for a run today?
Hi, both. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been nice to speak to you. So I'm at home in Bath. I live in Bath. I can see out the window my neighbour's gardens. If I look behind me out the window, there's a lovely view of the city of Bath, though. And have I been for a run today? Yes, I have. I got out this morning, went for a run. My husband's been away for 3 days, but he just got back, so made the most of it this morning, got out and did my run. I was like, see you later.
Yes.
Would it be, I always like to ask if would it be a structured session or just easy miles?
It was actually an interval session this morning, which I should have done yesterday, but didn't happen yesterday, so I did it this morning. So I had 8 by 2 minutes with 90 seconds recovery, and then 4 by 1 minute.
On a hill or flat?
I did it on the flat. We've got like a tow path that's a few minutes from my house along the canal, so I just did it along there. I don't often do sessions like that, but every now and again they come around in a training cycle.
How are you feeling post Snowdonia? How's the recovery gone? Because we are 3 weeks now. Is that right? Is it longer?
I think it's a month.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
I think it's been 4 weeks actually, which has flown by. Generally, I feel okay. I had a horrible cold last week, so I felt pretty rubbish. But before that, I was feeling like I recovered okay. And then, this week I feel good again. So had a bit of an up and down week last week, but feeling fine.
Really, especially now you're not single parenting anymore. And you can, I remember that when the kids were young and Bryn would go away and then I'd literally be standing in my kit.
Tag team.
Yeah, I need to get in.
That is a real juggle. When
they're young, it's super hardcore. Lizzie, can you tell us a little bit about your journey as a runner? For people that don't know we were laughing because you do. If you're listening to this and you want to know more about Lizzie, you can go and find her blog, which she didn't know was still up in the internet. But the young family came along, and the blog, the running didn't stop, but the blog sadly gave the right balance. But can you tell us a little bit about your journey and your history as a runner?
So I haven't always run. It's like very much something that I picked up in later life. But I guess when I was younger, I did do a lot of sport. Like I've always done a lot of sport. I've always been really sporty. My first love was gymnastics. I did that for a lot of years, and I was definitely borderline obsessed with it.
Can you still pull off a good handspring? Cartwheel?
Oh no. I haven't tried that for a long time. But I do think it gave me like a really good foundation, like for the rest of my life in terms of like core strength. So that's kind of my first love. And then when I moved into like more into secondary school, I did a lot of team sports, like netball, football, hockey, loved it all. And did do a little bit of athletics, but more like sprint and jump events. So sprint hurdles was my main event, and long jump. But I did get roped into doing cross country at school, and actually had a pretty good cross country team. We came second at nationals one year.
You must have had a good teacher in the background putting that together.
Yeah, I did. I was lucky actually. I had really good PE teachers all the way through school. And I think I just made the most of every opportunity because I loved sport.
But cross country at that age, cross country at my school, that was a punishment. It sounds like you actually quite enjoyed it.
I think I enjoyed it because like we had a really good group of...
Yeah, that helps.
But we never trained. Like literally rocked up on the start line and ran the race, and that was it. There was like no training involved. So I didn't actually start doing any running training until much later. So before uni, I got more into water sports. I did a lot of surfing and windsurfing, and I was a surf instructor and a windsurf instructor. So that was kind of what occupied most of my time while I was at uni. And then towards the back end of uni, started dabbling in a little bit of triathlon. So that was kind of when I first started doing a bit of endurance training. And then post-university, I went out to Australia to work as an exercise physiologist at the Australian Institute of Sport.
Wow.
Doing the triathlon.
My goodness me.
That's a cool job.
It was really cool. I loved it. And that was out in Canberra. And I joined a triathlon club out there. And a lot of people were really into like long distance triathlon, Ironman. And I got roped into doing like a lot of adventure racing and really enjoyed it. And that was how my first taste of trail running. And then when I was out there, I just remember being in the running shop in Canberra and picked up a flyer for the North Face 100. Which is now called Ultra Trail Australia. And I genuinely just thought at the time, it's in the Blue Mountains. I was like, I really want to visit the Blue Mountains, so maybe I'll just go and do this race. But I don't know what gave me the confidence, because I'd literally never run further than like a half marathon at that point. But anyway, I entered this race and actually had a really like great support team from work who came with me. So a couple of the nutritionists from work came and crewed me. So I did have like amazing support, and I probably wouldn't have got through the race without them. But as it happened, it actually went pretty well. It probably went off way too quick. I was in the lead at one point. Went through the marathon point and thought like, oh, I've just run my first marathon.
Fantastic.
Another one now. And then another half one. But I managed to hold on, and I ended up coming third.
Absolutely amazing.
That was my first ultra marathon experience.
What was the terrain like? I've been to Blue Mountains, and I don't remember two mountains. I remember being at some vantage point, and it seemed like I looked down on the mountains almost. It was quite strange. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So the kind of like village or town where you start is quite high up, and then you end up going quite far like down. I mean, it's a long time ago now, so I don't actually remember it that clearly.
You must have been in a world of pain probably as well after the marathon. Just like...
But I do remember there being quite a lot of like scrambly bits and ladders and stuff like that. So it was, I think, relatively technical in parts. And then, like you say, like not huge mountains, but definitely a fair amount of climbing. It really did hurt at the time, but I kind of looked back and I was like, oh, like maybe I do have like a bit of talent, I guess, for running far. Like I managed to get through that, and then everyone starts telling you about all the other amazing races that there are.
Was that it then? Was that it then? Were you like, now I'm going to be a trail runner?
Yeah, that was it. And then I heard about UTMB, and I was like, whoa, that blew my mind, that there was this race where you could run around Mont Blanc and run through 3 different countries. And I was like, I really want to do that. And then, you just start hearing about race after race after race. It's all kind of spiraled from there, really. And I do feel quite lucky because I found it relatively early. Like, I think I was only about 24, 25 when I did that first race. So I've had like a really good innings now. 13 years. It's 2010 that I did.
I was going to ask you when that was, 2010. So what came after that race? What was your next big adventure?
I think the next one I did was Lakeland 50. And then I did UTMB in then 2012.
And how was that? Because that UTMB in 2012 is very different from probably what UTMB looks like now.
Did you just enter though in 2012?
Yeah,
and now it's
like,
super hard.
You would never have done it.
I know it was. I think it was much easier to get into back then, but also because of that decent result I'd had at the North Face 100, and I think UTMB was also sponsored by North Face then. I just seemed to manage to get an entry.
Yeah, I do remember around that time I used to just get like offered, do you want, like, I look back, I'm like, oh God, I was having babies, so I couldn't do it, but I used to be like, do you want your CCC place? And I'd be like, I'll do it another year. And now I'm like, oh my God.
Now
it definitely was easier, and it definitely was smaller. That year was an interesting year because the weather ended up being really bad, and so we ended up having like a bad weather route, so didn't actually get to make the whole.
Is that the year Jez Bragg and Lizzie ran, or is that earlier? Is that later?
I think they were both there, yeah. But we ended up doing like a loop almost just around the Chamonix Valley. We didn't get to go all the way around. I finished. I didn't have the best race. I had a lot of like stomach issues, but I think I ended up coming 17th or 18th or something.
Amazing.
Oh, amazing, yeah.
was a terrible result, but I still feel like I need to go back and run the whole
For sure.
thing.
Have you ever done the whole tour?
I've done it, like walked it.
Yeah. I knew you must have.
Walked it with my husband in training, yeah. Been around a couple of times actually. And then I tried to do UTMB again. Can't remember what year it was, but another year, but ended up fell and injured my knee and had to drop out.
Okay.
So I still got...
It's still there. It's not, don't worry,
there.
it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. There's just lots of people on the course. And then you went over and you did, we have chatted to Lizzie Hawker about the Ultra Trail Monte Rosa, and it's on both of Gary's and I bucket list. And you had a bit of bad luck with the weather on that race too.
Yeah, there's a theme. It was just the reality of racing in the mountains, isn't
for
it?
sure.
Like, so unpredictable. Monte Rosa is beautiful and it's so wild, I think, compared to UTMB. Like the trails are quite different and almost more spectacular. Like you go over glaciers and stuff, which you don't in UTMB. So yeah, the route is really beautiful. And definitely
how far along did you get before they stopped it?
So you got to the halfway point.
Okay.
Which was 80K. I did that after having Amelie, my first child. I think that was about a year after having her.
I like the idea of there's the other event, isn't there, where you do it more of a stage race. Yeah. That to me, oh my goodness me, I'm all over that one.
My mates have got that one, but it's right when kids go back to school.
Yeah.
I said that to Lizzie, didn't I? I was like, can you move the weekend? It's really not convenient.
Yeah.
In between all this time, Lizzie, of doing these races, doing amazingly at races as well, developing your career as an athlete. Lizzie's very humble, but she actually did amazingly well in all these races. And you were also having two little girls. How did you find lots of women are listening, will be listening to this, and they hear me every week whining about the juggle of kids and running, and you're right in the trenches, as we say, with young girls as well. How, perhaps you could talk a little bit about how you found coming back to running after having the kids, that sort of journey.
I've definitely had like breaks while I've had the kids from running, and I feel like that's it's probably been good for my long term.
Did you run during your pregnancies?
So I did with Amelie. So during my first pregnancy, I felt pretty good all the way through. Actually ran like a half marathon PB, I think, at like 13 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah, I continued to race as well. I think I ran trail marathon about 25 weeks, ran all the way through. That felt fine. But I actually ended up having like quite a traumatic labour with her and a few complications afterwards. So the recovery, I think, took a lot longer. And then with my second, with Jasmine, I actually went into the pregnancy with a stress fracture in my foot. I know, it was rubbish. And I found the second pregnancy a lot harder.
I think they just are harder, aren't they?
Exhausted all the time. And I had to take time.
Sorry, as a new mum, say with a stress fracture, and I'm not too sure if you're breastfeeding or not, would that be, because the baby's taken so many nutrients from you, would that increase the recovery time for something like a stress fracture?
Probably. It's definitely like a huge demand on your body. I think it increases your energy demands by a third or something like that. Like it's a lot. It is a lot. You do have to really look after yourself and just rest. But the stress fracture wasn't when I was breastfeeding. It was like early on in the pregnancy, and then I was just so exhausted. And then by the time that stress fracture had actually healed, I was right in the thick of just feeling like so nauseous. I did try a couple of runs, it just didn't feel great. Ended up not running that whole pregnancy with Jasmine, but the birth then was a lot more straightforward and recovery felt easier. So I felt like I was able to get back into running a bit quicker after having her. And I think the break probably does do you good. It's definitely hard coming back after a long break. And I ended up having a few Achilles niggles, which always seems to happen with me when I take a long break from running.
Do you think you got a bit better at listening to your body the second time around because you knew you'd get there in the end? It's just a bit of a rocky road, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely, definitely. And I think as I've got older, I've just got better at that, trusting my body and listening to my body and looking at the long term and the big picture in terms of actually if you take a few days off, it's better than pushing through and making yourself ill or sick or injured. Yeah, I think I've definitely got better at that.
How do you manage training? How did you manage to get yourself into 100K winning shape with two little people? How do you juggle that? What does training look like?
I guess I do what I can, and it's definitely not perfect. That's the first thing I'd say. Like, I absolutely don't feel like I nailed training this winter, but I've done the best I can. And I'm lucky that my husband's like super supportive. At weekends, he'll ask like, what do you need to do today? Where can we fit it in? And we'll just make it work. So I've got a lot to thank him for, I think. I would not be able to do it without him. But I run probably 6 days most weeks. I always take one full rest day. And then I'll try and fit training in because I'm back at work now.
Are you still working in exercise physiology?
Not in exercise physiology, but I still work in sport. So I work for UK Sport now. I'm a performance advisor for them. So I have a portfolio.
That sounds really interesting.
I can tell you more about that.
Yeah, go on. We love it. Yeah.
So UK Sport is like the government agency that's responsible for investing in Olympic and Paralympic sport in the UK. In my role as a performance advisor, I work closely with like a portfolio of sports. So that includes summer sports, winter sports, Olympic and Paralympic sports to support them to try and achieve their performance goals at future games. And that could look like a lot of different things. It could be helping to guide them through like an investment process to secure future funding. It could be like working with them to review and refine their strategy. It could be helping to coordinate support from other teams at UK Sport based on their needs, or like exploring a performance risk or opportunity and like building a plan. That's kind of what the role is. And yeah, it's really interesting. I love it. I'm only been back at work a couple of months now after having Jasmine, and it's definitely full on, but I'm lucky.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds like a lot of things to juggle in the head. That's a lot of things to remember and to be like, and then also trying to be mum. Do you work full time, or do you have a day and you can gather yourself?
Yeah, I work 4 days a week. Gosh. And then Fridays I have off, but I've got Jasmine, so it's not really off, is it? Yeah. But I have Fridays with my littlest one. And then my older one's at school. So.
Sounds a super interesting job. So would you be involved? I don't know anything about it, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you hear quite often that say maybe funding is pulled from a certain group of athletes because their medal potential isn't there, for example. Is that what involved in your job too?
Yeah, like I'm not directly involved with deciding on investment decisions, but I certainly would support sports to try and put together like a case for securing funding.
Are they like, oh, this trail run, why does this trail running keep popping up and as Olympic sport?
No, it's not quite there yet, is it?
But it's great because you come from such a multi-sport background as well, that you kind of probably have you've got lots of experience in all sorts of different sports. You get a real understanding, and it must feel like you're really working towards something positive.
Yeah, and it's a hugely inspirational, I'd say, group of people to work with, and like I get to see athletes and coaches like doing what they do, and they're so committed, and yeah, it is really inspirational.
It's fascinating as an adult. When I was a kid, I'd watch, say, an athlete and I'd just think, oh, they're good at what they do. That's why at the Olympics, but there's so much behind that performance. It's quite amazing. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, there really is.
We were Googling Harry Kane yesterday, his diet, and he has a chef that the chef doesn't cook all his food, but he comes in and preps all his food for him so he can still cook with his family, but he has it all prepped so it's everything's right for what's training. And so I was like, can you imagine, Lizzie, can you imagine if we had someone that I would actually pay someone to come and do that for me and be like, don't cook, let me pretend to the kids.
I'd love a midnight treat, an evening treat chef. All the things I want, it shouldn't be what I eat, but if I could have a little chef to point me in the right direction, that'd be great.
All the little things. And Lizzie, I'm sure you feel the same. The running as a mum is actually the really easy bit. It's all the other stuff that you have to do in order to do the running.
So it is a real juggle. And like, I don't ever feel like I'm really on top of things. It feels like chaos most of the time, if I'm honest. But it is like a happy chaos, generally. So I think I've just reached the point of acceptance that like the house is not going to be tidy. The kids might not have the most nutritious meals all the time, but we'll get through.
Exactly. Every day they're still breathing, they go to bed, they're happy, they're loved. But it took me quite a long time to let that slip. I used to try and do it all and be it all. And now I've very much gone down the other side.
You just can't.
Just can't. And also nobody cares. Like nobody cares if the bathrooms haven't had a wipe around and the laundry is still all up on my bed still. Like, as the kids much prefer me to be present than, and also it's so tiring if you are trying to do like run 6 days a week. If you try and then do everything else as well, something gives, and you don't want to get injured, do you? And that's when often you can get injured if you try. There's literally no recovery otherwise in your day, and you've got a little one as well, so. You're not. I was gonna ask. I was gonna go. Oh, so do you do your long run on Friday?
No, I sometimes go take Jasmine for a little buggy run. We'll go out together with the buggy. That's quite a good way of fitting it in on a Friday. In the week, I can sometimes run in my lunch hour, but I quite like to get out and just get it done early if I can.
And you're lucky with where you live because you've got such a great load of trails and you've got quite a lot of climbing that you can do as well.
Yeah, it's actually really hilly around here. Not mountains, definitely not mountains, but like loads of hills. You can get a decent amount of elevation. So most days I'll be going up and down a lot of hills.
Right.
Let's do a hard pivot.
Let's get into the nitty gritty of the good stuff now. Gary's desperate to ask. Wants all the deets.
Well, first of all, congratulations. First place at the UTS 100K Snowdonia.
I was so thrilled when you won it, Lizzie. So thrilled. I was just so pleased when I saw you because you're such an amazing athlete and you've gone away and you had your babies and you come back and beaten a really elite field. And you looked so amazing.
It was a stick field.
So little, let me fangirl. I don't fangirl very much, do I, Gary? Normally I'm like, yeah, whatever.
That's very, very sweet and kind. Well, I was very shocked. I did not expect it.
So why that race, though? I'm always curious why an athlete picks a certain race.
Well, good question. So I've signed up to do Tour de Géants in September, which has been like my dream race for quite a long time now. And I had a place to do it in 2020, and then it got cancelled because of COVID, and I was pregnant. So it's been a few years, but this was the last year that I could like roll over my place from.
I see. Okay.
So it's like, I might not be 100% ready, but I'm just going to do it, gain the experience. So I've got that in September. So I wanted to do a few races in the lead up, I guess, that would prepare me as well as possible for doing TGG. And UTS feels like probably the best race in the UK in terms of like the elevation profile to get some, I guess, running.
It's pretty big. It's about 20,000 feet.
Yeah, I mean, I work in meters, 6,500 meters. So I don't know what that is in feet.
Times it by 3 roughly.
Like similar to mountain races out in the Alps for sure.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what attracted me to it. And also, like, I love running in Snowdonia, but I didn't think I'd be quite ready for the 100 miler. So I signed up for the 100K.
The 100 miler, if TGG is your main focus, you didn't need to do like that. You'd have dug a hole that might have taken a bit of while to get out of, and you'd have had to burn some matches to do that race. You probably had to burn a few. That's unfeeling of me. You probably had to burn a few for the 100K, but maybe just 1 or 2 rather than the whole box.
Yeah.
The recovery too. The recovery from 100 milers. So for me, anyway, the ones that I've done over 100K. Yeah, that extended recovery takes a toll for future training anyway.
For sure, yeah. So that's why I wanted to do it. It was an amazing atmosphere. It was an amazing race. It was really hot. And I think it was like that first really hot weekend of the year. So it kind of took quite a lot of people by surprise. You're just not used to dealing with it. But I actually love running in that kind of weather. It's so much easier, I think, to run on that terrain when it's really clear and you can see where you're going. Yeah, just so beautiful. It did get really hot in the middle of the day especially when you were down in the valley, and it definitely was hard to deal with. And some of the aid stations were like total carnage. I think we actually ran out of water at one of them. At one point.
Well, we heard this, but we hadn't had it confirmed. Were they rationing water on the course, or is that just a rumour?
I think they was one checkpoint which had ended up having all the races go through it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
There was like the 50K, 30K. And so there was one that was like a real pinch point, I think, because it was that much hotter than probably everyone had expected. People were probably just using loads more water. And so I think they did have to ration it at one point while they were getting it topped up again. I don't know the full story. It didn't affect me, but I did hear that people behind was being told they could only like fill up one bottle. Did
you have a plan? Did you have a race plan, and how did it pan out? I know you obviously, spoiler, you did win it, but
I mean, I guess so. I didn't go into the race expecting to win. I kind of thought if I had like a really good day, there was a chance I might finish on the podium, but I really didn't expect to win. So I guess my race plan was to like run a controlled race for the first half. And that's generally like my strategy with any of the long stuff, is to make sure I'm keeping a bit in the tank for the second half of the race.
How do you gauge that? Would you monitor your heart rate, or just a perceived effort?
Because I've run for so long, it's just a feeling of like, I can tell when my breathing's getting out of control and it's not sustainable, or if like my heart rate's beating so fast that I feel like it's getting out of control. So I don't like monitor my heart rate during the race. I guess I kind of know what too hard might be, what unsustainable feels like. So like going up the first climb up Snowdon, I was very much trying to like keep myself in the mix, but not push myself into the red zone, because I knew there's quite a lot of running to go. And likewise on the first descents, actually, I wasn't trying to like keep the flow, but not push too hard that I would risk either falling or like smashing my legs up too much for the second half of the race. So just running like a really controlled race for the first half. And I knew it was going to be really hot, so I really focused on like fueling, trying to have a gel every half hour, and then I was drinking like electrolytes the whole time. So I think that was my focus for the first half, just like run a controlled race, focus on myself, don't worry about what anyone else is doing, and then see where you get to at halfway.
When did it start feeling like a race? I think Robin Cassidy was just behind you at the end, 15 minutes.
We actually ran together for about 30K.
Oh, wow, okay.
It felt like I was running with a friend. Like we had such a nice time together. I really enjoyed running with her. Yeah, we were definitely racing, but it was like a friendly racing and trying to help each other rather than being too competitive with each other. But I caught Robin up just after halfway. There's a climb, Mol Shabod, coming out of Capel Currig, and it was really, really hot going up there because it was like right in the middle of the day, about 1 o'clock, I think, hottest time of the day. And I caught Robin up just at the like summit of Mol Shabod, and I think she was just going through a bit of a low patch, maybe like missed a gel or something. So we ended up running together for ages, and that was great. It was really nice to have someone to run with because I'd been on my own for a fair while, and our pace just seemed like really compatible. Ran down into the valley again. It was super, super, super hot at that point. Like really felt it. So again, I was just focusing on like whenever we came across a stream or water source, trying to like dip my cap in it, chuck a load of water over my head, the back of my neck, like get my wrists in there. Because I think that can really help you to feel loads better when the weather is really hot. It's worth taking a few seconds to do that.
The wrists, that's only something relatively recently I've heard about, is dip your wrists in. That is a great tip.
I usually, when it's hot, like wear a buff around my wrist and then dip that in, and then like it kind of stays there as well, and you can use it to drip water over your face. You
mentioned Robin might have missed a gel at a low point. Did you have any low points?
It did get hard. It did get really hard. I remember thinking mid-race, I don't want to do this again. What am I thinking? Got to run 350. I do remember thinking that, but I think I managed to keep going like pretty well. I didn't have a point where I felt like super sick or had to stop. Like I think I managed to actually sustain my pace really well. I managed to keep eating. The last 20K did start to feel like it was more difficult to get fuel down, and like I think you just get a bit of flavour fatigue, don't you? Like the gels.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
We're going down all right. I had those Velo Forte shoes. I couldn't get them down the last 20K. They were great for the start of the race. But, and so I just had to change it up and ended up relying a bit more on just drinking Coke at the aid stations. I think your body can tell you a little bit what you want, but yeah, it did get challenging fueling towards the end.
And were you running scared at this?
I was going to say, when did you break Robin? Love you, Robin, but just so we can.
It was very hard to break Robin. So we started the climb up snow. So you get snowed in twice at the start of the race, and then at about, I think it's probably about 65K in, something like that, you go up it again. So again, it was like right in the middle of the day. It was super hot, and the path that you start on, the Watkin path, there's like this beautiful waterfall with loads of swimming pools right beside it, and so we could see everyone just jumping in these pools and going for a swim, and like literally all you wanted to do was stop running and jumping with them. So that was like, that probably was the low point. It was just like, we've just got to keep pressing up this massive hill, but you just keep going, don't you, and pushing on as much as you can. And I did manage to get a little gap on Robin at the top of Snowdon, and like ran down it on my own, and I thought maybe I've broken away from her, but at the checkpoint at the bottom she caught me up. Which was like, I think I maybe just like minced around a bit too much.
I hit a checkpoint. Yeah, you think you've got a gap,
and
then
you hit the cheering and they're right there, and you're like, what? I've just worked for 2 hours and you're a minute behind.
Exactly. That's exactly how it was. I was like, oh, I thought I had a gap. So ran again with Robin for a little while longer, and then going up the next hill, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Minadmauer or something like that, which had not been up before, that one. Again, like just as we were getting to the top of the hill, I managed to get a little bit of a gap. I think I pushed a bit harder on the descent.
Okay.
And then I focused on at the checkpoint at the bottom, like try and get in and out as quickly as possible. That time around, I did manage to get in and out before Robin caught me at that one. And then I knew, like on that final climb up Mol Elio, I just had to keep running. And there was quite a lot of points on that climb where it's that really runnable gradient when you're fresh, but at the end of 100K, really hard to like force yourself to run. So there's quite a few bits where the gradient was really runnable, but I was just brutal. But I forced myself to run those bits. Yeah, again, got a little gap, and I could see as I was climbing up to the peak, the summit, I couldn't see Robin behind me. So I knew I had at least 5 minutes on her at that point. But the final climb was quite, there was a lot of false summits. When we finally got to actually turn downhill and run downhill, but got there in the end. And yeah, I couldn't see Robin behind me, so just gunned that final downhill as fast.
I suppose also if Robin was still climbing while you were going downhill, then your foot speed would be so much faster than Robin's. Amazing. And did it, I'm really intrigued by the whole race series down there. Yeah, did it live up to your expectations? And any tips for potential people who might be thinking about towing the line?
I thought it was great. I thought the organisation was great. The whole thing ran really smoothly. Like there was a great atmosphere. Not as crazy as UTMB, but certainly like there was a lot of people around, really good commentators, is that what you'd say? People are like on the mic the whole time. MCs, that's it. Like Matt Ward was there, he's great. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. The start and finish is at the Slate Museum in Llanberis, which feels like quite like an atmospheric start and finish point. And the mountains were like so beautiful, really at their best. I mean, when it's a real rainy day, might feel a bit
Well, you're right. The weather you mentioned earlier, the weather transforms the event. Here you can be kind of trust where you're going to put your feet, and you can see what's ahead of you. That really, really speeds up the whole event for everybody. Apart from the heat, I suppose, will take its toll eventually.
It's definitely a balance. But in terms of tips for people that want to do it, it is quite technical in parts, and I think that probably shocks some people if they're not expecting it. Some of the climbs and the descents are like a real scramble, or you're running down a scree slope. So I think like getting out on the course like is definitely a great option if you can make that happen. And particularly like the first half of the race is quite technical. So that would definitely be my top tip, but also just get as much climbing and descending as possible, because it is quite a spicy elevation profile on that race.
Is that what your training looked like? Were you trying to find as many hills as possible?
I think after I did the arc of attrition back in January, and after that I kind of really focused on just sustaining the mileage I was doing, but adding in a bit more elevation. And like, that was hard. I definitely didn't do as much as I wanted. The Brecon Beacons for me, that's my nearest mountain range. So I like try and get out there at weekends or whenever I get the opportunity. So I did that a few times. And then I actually did an event up in the Lake District a couple of weeks prior to UTS, an event called Great Lakeland 3-Day, which is...
Oh, that looked amazing.
It's amazing. Oh, it's such a great event. One of my faves, actually. It's like so social and it's so fun and they make everything so easy. But the routes, like the actual routes, are really challenging if you do the expert course. But then there's like loads of options if you don't want to push yourself that hard. So it's just a great event for everyone. So I went and did the expert course over 3 days and just got some really good long runs in the mountains.
Sounds like a great training camp, you know, with
It was, yeah, that's the way I thought of it. I really just thought of it like this is an opportunity to like practice with all my kit for UTS, practice my nutrition for UTS. But also the weather for that was horrendous. Like it rained a lot. We were completely in the clag. And that's a race where you have to navigate, which is not my strongest point. So I also felt like I spent a lot of time getting lost in the mist, looking for summits.
I'm really glad you had a clear day on UTS then. You're not still up there looking... But let's move forward now. Our next point, so we've just deleted everything because we were going to like ask you about whether you're going to do CCC and blah, blah, blah.
Could I ask one question though? Sorry, Eddie. I know our listeners will be interested. What shoes did you wear?
For UTS, I started off in like a Salomon S-Lab Ultra or something, which actually... like it was good and I really enjoyed running it, but it started rubbing my ankle a bit. So I ended up swapping at midway. There was an opportunity to have a drop bag at halfway and I'd put some spare shoes in there just in case. So I put on some Innovates. I don't know what the model is, sorry. It's like an X-Talon, like something X-Talon Ultra or something.
I won't know either. Don't worry. Gary will probably go, oh yeah,
they'll be going on
right here.
They'll be going on the UTMB site and zooming in to see.
And they were great for the second half.
So TGG is next. What is what's the plan? What's the sort of next few months plan for that? The doublest, longest way you'll ever have run. So, how are you planning for that? And then are you going out by yourself?
Yeah, I am going to go out myself because it's like Amelie's back at school then. So Eddie's going to stay at home with the girls and I'm going to go out. But my good friend Rini and her partner Ewan have agreed to crew for me, which I'm super grateful for, because I feel like it could be pretty challenging if you don't have a crew when it's like my first time running through multiple nights. So I feel very lucky that they're going to come with me and help me out. And also just looking forward to spending some time with them. But what am I going to do between now and then? It's actually not that far away. I worked it out the other day and it's only about 12 and a half weeks.
Yeah.
So not that long. So just like 3 months of trying to get really consistent training in. So I don't do loads of volume. Like I just can't fit it in, but my sweet spot seems to be like running about 100 kilometers a week. That seems to work for me. It seems to be sustainable. So I'll probably do some peak weeks that are more than that, but I'm not doing like really big mileage at the moment. But what I will do again is just try and focus on getting as much time in the mountains as I can. The reality is it's not going to be loads, but I'll get out to the Brecon Beacons a bit, and I think we're going to spend a couple of weeks out in Austria in August.
Oh, so, perfect. Yeah.
I'll do a bit of training out there when we're there.
Are you a fan of the back-to-back long run?
I haven't been doing that lately. I guess apart from when I did Great Lakeland 3-Day, I probably will do a bit of that in the summer in the lead up to the tour because it's just such a long way, and I think that would be quite a good way to prepare my legs. But generally, like the practicality of having young kids at the moment is lucky if I get like one long run a weekend is.
Yeah, it's great to share because I think there's so many different approaches to training, and people maybe want to go down one philosophy, and if they can't do it because of their weekly commitments, and they get pretty stressed out about it. But then you listen to athletes and they say, well, I don't do back-to-back runs very often unless it's part of, say, maybe an event. And that'll be so powerful for listeners who are really just struggling to do what they think they should be doing. Yeah, it's good to share that.
Well, if you can't recover, there's no point doing it, because the long runs are the ones that take the time to recover. And you just, if you've got a family, you've had your slot when you do your run. You don't then have Netflix all afternoon to recover.
I was wrecked. After my Bob Graham round support on Friday, I think I ran about 6 miles, did lots of walking, but I was like, no, I am pooped. No way.
Well, Lizzie, I'm doing the top direct. So I'm doing the baby. I'm starting at halfway. So I was talking to James Elson at the weekend going, because Emma Stewart is going out to do it too. And I was like, will I catch up with you guys, or will you pass, like, where will I be? Yeah. And I think he was like, yeah, because when he did it, he said, the top direct runners start coming past us. Okay. Annoyingly, it must be so annoying because you're like...
Well, that would be very cool if we do get
I'm like, that would be I know, having done that distance, that you probably wouldn't even recognize me once you're in there. But maybe we can share a Villa Forte shot or not. We can maybe.
Oh, what a time to be alive.
What a day to be alive. Some salty broth at a refuge. But at least, I think there's going to be quite a lot of, and lots of English females out there on the trails. And I've only run, I'm hoping to do, maybe not next year, do the full loop. But I've run parts of it, and it's such a lovely trail. It looks amazing. I keep YouTubing the different climbs and going, it's going to be amazing.
Well, you're more prepared than me because I haven't done that. But I have...
Get the kids on YouTube, and while they're eating their lunch, you can say, we're all going to watch this mountain. They're all made by like really random Italian middle-aged men, but I always like to know what I'm going up, not so worried about the coming down. I'm like, what am I going up? What's this going to look like at the top? Kind of know when you're getting to the top, when you see the change.
It looks really beautiful. I've heard really good things about the race. So, I've got no idea whether I'll be able to finish it or not.
You've got just keep those gel shots going down. You got all the right skills there. You just have to and just sleep. Just make sure that you bank a little bit of, don't think that 20 minutes nap is never worth it, because it could save you hours of standing on the trail going, and which way was it? Oh my God, I can't remember. Why am I in Chamonix?
I can see that in the spine race. Honestly, Lizzie, people would come into Middleton looking like death, and about an hour later they'd go out kind of doing little Dorothy kick of the heels as they went out the door. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
I thought of that on Saturday, because get to checkpoints like dying, and I'd be like, remember the spine checkpoints, Gary, when you reach them and you feel like, no, this is it. There's no physical way. And then it's amazing. Especially, I imagine those TGG refuges, like they're in such amazing positions as well. Quite incredible when you get to them. Not a youth hostel in Middleton.
I kind of figure the worst case scenario, if the race is not going very well, is it just turns into like a hiking holiday.
Exactly. That's what I thought as well. I was like, it's just like 50k to the next refuge. That's like a day and a bit of hiking if I can keep moving forward, and then some salty broth and someone to rub my feet and a little sleep.
Luxury, isn't it?
Oh, well, we wish you all the best for preparation. Hope you continue your storming 2023. We'll be tracking you. Well,
best of luck.
Gary will be tracking both of us, waiting for the drama to unfold.
Thank you. Yeah, well, hopefully I might see you out there, Eddie.
Happy, yes. Always do this at the end of the show, Lizzie. We've actually got 7 questions, so
have we?
Take as long. Yeah.
Gosh, we need dragging back. Why don't you do that one first?
Well, I'll rattle through them anyway. You don't have to. You say as much or as little as you want about each question. What was your favourite subject at school?
PE. Unsurprisingly, yeah. Loved it.
Do you have a favourite TV show or something you watch on a Netflix binge?
I love a bit of Great British Bake Off.
Oh, I love anything cooking.
Anything, yeah. That's an easy watch, isn't it? Yeah. That'd be my favourite.
I'd put Bake Off on if I'm doing my sit-ups on the floor. For some reason, it just makes it all easier. My core workout. Okay, well, Eddie and I are coming around your house for dinner. We've got to cater for a vegetarian and, well, you don't have to cater for a meat eater. What would be your meal of choice?
Oh, good question. I would maybe cook up like a nice lentil dal with some like sweet potato on top or something like that.
I'm coming.
Lovely.
I'm knocking on. Oh.
That sounds lovely. Okay, top tip. Asking for a friend for a Dragon's Back content, and it can't be say Recce the Route because that might not actually happen.
Top tip for Dragon's Back. Just pace yourself. Don't go out too hard on day one. Like day one is brutal. It's a really tough day. So control your effort on day one. Protect the legs for the rest of the race. Protect the legs for the rest of the race. That's what I'd say. And just try and like look after your body as much as possible. Like any sore spots, get a blister plaster on them straight away. Look after your feet.
Bit of management.
Yeah.
At the end of the show, we always say, be kind to your future self. We could change it now to protect your legs.
And then, eat, fuel up as much as possible as soon as you get back into camp.
You're suddenly gifted with a skill. What would be your skill of choice?
Oh,
that's a tough question. I was thinking about this. I thought I'd go for like bushcraft. I'd feel like know what plants I could eat. That would be a good one.
I think I'd really like to be able to like play the piano really well.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
I'd like a wand, and I went ding, and my house was clean and tidy, and the food was chopped, and all I had to do was stir fry it.
That would be good. Is there a board game that you particularly love or you can beat anybody else at?
Oh.
Your kids probably aren't quite at or maybe, but Snakes and Ladders? No, not quite at the board game.
Snakes and Ladders is about as far as we get. I do quite enjoy a game of drafts.
Oh, yeah. I like a bit of Game of Life. Do you remember Game of Life?
Oh, yes, I love that.
We were big board games when we were younger, deprived kids, because we grew up abroad. So we didn't have much TV. We did a lot of Monopoly, Game of Life, Go for Broke.
Yeah, Cluedo. Classic.
Cluedo.
Or do you know there's one called Carcassonne? Do you guys know that one?
Oh no, I played that one.
That's a really good game. I quite enjoy that one.
I'm all about pairs and Snap now. I'm like, I'll play any game, but it's got to be a card game.
Okay, last question. Every show we share the podcast on Instagram. It's your choice, though. What would your Instagram story music choice be?
Do you want a song that like I would choose, or a song that my 5-year-old daughter would choose?
Oh, we can't make that decision for you.
If I left it up to Amelie, she would choose. We have a lot of like Disney soundtracks. Or
I'm more than happy with that, Lizzie. I'm more than happy with that.
We're overdue a Disney track, actually. We're with future heads this week, so we could go to Disney.
You know, the one actually she loves at the moment is the Greatest Showman soundtrack. So maybe that's
This is the greatest show. Oh,
yeah.
What's that?
Come Alive.
Come Alive. It's gonna go. Okay, I like that one.
What a film! I absolutely love that film. That was fantastic.
Yeah, it's good, that one. Okay, I've got it. I've noted. I love it. You'll have to play that at TDG when things are going tough. Get that Greatest Showman soundtrack.
Come Alive, yeah.
I remember trying to play music on the spot. I could not work out. Like I was like, can't remember how to get the things to sync and the and I was like, get the phone out and be like, what? Oh, I can't remember how to get the spot. And we need the old. I did think you need an old iPod just with the button and the earphones for
keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Oh, best of luck. Well done on the Snowdonia 100K. Super well done. And best of luck with the next few months preparing for TTG and enjoy. And maybe when you've done it, we can hear all about it.
Yeah. Best of luck and thanks for your time today, Lizzie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lizzie, for coming on the show. Good luck with your preparation for Tour de Géant. Hopefully, might see you out there. My dream is that Bryn and I will be crushing through the Tour de Géant field and we'll get to see Emma and Lizzie. But I have a feeling Bryn and I might be a few hours behind them. We won't mind.
Domestic.
Minor domestic about his changing his trainers for every descent, which was our conversation this week. But we might somehow our paths might cross. But good luck with your preparation for that, and look forward to, well, I'll be either ahead or behind you on those trails, sharing the suffering. I did a 1,000-meter climb this morning, and that felt long enough. Just got to do 12 of those, Gary. There's only one Strava club.
There is only one Strava club. And I think there's like nearly 1,200 people in our Strava club, which, I keep checking it out and say, wow, this is just growing and growing and growing. So it's pretty
Every
wild
day
over
I
there.
get like 10 new followers on Strava. It's madness. It's madness, I tell you. And I love it. And if you don't give me kudos and you follow me, then I don't love you, because I'm only in it for the kudos. Before we recorded this, Gary had to give me a workshop on getting my run off Garmin onto Strava, because I was like, I just did a really nice shape on the map for the kudos. I have no interest in like pace or anything. I just want thumbs up and a nice comment.
It's nice when you get a lovely map on your lovely route on your Strava. It's good.
Yeah, like, is there anything worse? No, I'm going to talk more. Is there anything worse when you? No, I'm only joking. Gary said it.
Right.
Gary talks for half an hour before we start recording, and then when we're actually recording and we're being paid to talk, he's like,
I don't see anything.
Shut up! Come on.
Oh, who's top of the charts? Well, controversial.
Right. Oh, why would you mention this? You're going to mention it
because it's free information. People can go on Strava and see that Paul Whiteleg is actually.
Oh, now you're
second.
in the media. You're like, this is free information, Eddie. This is
what brought Blue Peter down, this dodgy competitions and stuff like that, wasn't it? I think like production staff, kids winning the prizes. I think that was...
was
anyway,
it?
Something like, I'll probably get myself in trouble here.
Oh my God, edit this all out. You single-handedly brought Blue Peter down.
That's a rumour. It's not fact. Paul Whiteleg tops the charts, 117.7 miles. Awesome.
A meager mileage, a very good mileage. Well done, but no 200 milers. We'll get with the Spiner out there next week. It's going to be ludicrous, I'm sure.
Yeah, it'd be interesting actually if we've got any Spiners in our group. The Lauder tops the charts for the amount of time on feet, 31 hours. Strava's locked down, so I can't see.
Open it up, my friend. If you're going to do Strava, just open wide and let it all.
You can do a privacy thing. On my Strava, I've taken out my...
Yeah. People don't know. Yeah. I mean, you could pretty much find where people live, can't you? But if I don't want people to know where I am, I just hide the map. You can just hide the map, can't you? But I'm only joking. If you want to have your Strava private.
Your Strava, you can do what you want. Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, right.
Oh, yes. And look who tops the charts for the elevation. Betha Chapman, just under 31,000 feet of vert. Oh, my goodness. That's some climbing. Big numbers.
You did awesome, Beth.
Yeah.
Good job.
Well done, everybody. And pop over to Strava and join the group.
Join the group, follow Gary and I, give us kudos, make our life worth living, really, isn't it? I don't follow a ton of people because, like you, I get a bit of, I just get, one, I use it for work, so I use it to see clients, but also I get a bit of when I can't run as much like you, Gary, if I see loads of people out running and doing big things, it just makes me sad. I choose wisely who I follow.
Well, I don't really look at it, so
no, I know. I had to make you. You'd go on about it enough.
Yeah.
Tales from the Trails. Love a long Tales from the Trails. Hi, Gary and Eddie. Hi. Thought I'd pass you on a Tales from the Trails that happened a few years ago while completing the Abrians Tea Round. Just to set the scene, I was desperate to attempt a round in the lake, and I'd settled on the Abrians Tea Round. I then needed to find someone else daft enough to do it with me. So I did what I normally do when I have a silly idea. I contact Dangerous David Wright.
Dangerous Dave.
Dangerous Dave. Everyone knows a Dangerous Dave. As he's always up for a nice day in the hills and the fells. Plans were hatched. GPX routes downloaded, packs loaded. Working from home was arranged. Love it. And after a silly alarm call, lots of tea, and a trip to collect my fellow explorer, we arrived at Keswick Rugby Club car park on a cold but lovely bright November morning. We got our kit sorted and walked to George Fisher's to touch the door and get on our way. After the photos, we set off through Keswick feeling like proper fell runners as the market stalls were being set up. We headed to Catbells, Robinson and beyond to Buttermere. It was a lovely day, but cold and hard work up high style. As the day went on and the morning turned to afternoon and darkness fell, we found ourselves on sail in the dark with driving snow. Ooh, dear. Not unlike Han Solo's view from the Millennium Falcon. But not to worry, we had all the gear and were loving the challenge. I hear you. I saw that for about 4 days in the spine. After an out and a back to Rolling End and a dodgy stream crossing, we found ourselves on Barrow with the nice grassy descent to come down to Braithwaite and home for tea and medals. Oh, is there a better feeling? It was on this descent, oh no, this is where it all goes wrong, listeners, that I started to get a bit blurry vision. I put this down to lack of tea. Definitely, most symptoms are down to lack of tea, tiredness and a cruddy head torch starting to die. At Braithwaite, I asked Dangerous, he's just become dangerous now. At Braithwaite, I asked Dangerous how he was, and he mentioned his vision was a bit funny. At this point, I started to explain that when I looked at a streetlight or lights of the house we were near, they all had a funny halo of light around, like Satan's wings. Dangerous had to admit that the same, and we thought sensible to take the road to Keswick. After arriving at George Fisher's to a long closed shop, we touched the door and shuffled back to the van, changed and headed for some sports nutrition, Pringles and chocolate from the garage, hoping this would sort our vision. I sat in the van waiting for Dave. Where is this story going? I sat in the van waiting for Dave. Oh, he's become Dave. He's not dangerous when he's not on the fells. To purchase some nutrition. And when he got in, I couldn't help but chuckle as he had somehow managed to lose the lens of his glasses and not notice. He did admit he wondered why the young lad behind the counter was looking at him in a funny way. We set off home gingerly, hoping the rings would disappear.
Oh my goodness me.
Oh my gosh. Obviously, the next day we rushed to get an expert opinion on what had happened from a medical professional, and Dr. Google told us our corneas had begun to freeze.
Oh, wow.
Safe to say this made an epic day out far more heroic. We both now carry goggles in winter and chuckle every time we meet about the day our eyes froze. I love it. Take care and keep up the top work, Jez Willis. I'm so sorry that you experienced Satan rings with Dangerous Dave, but I
Saturn's rings.
Loved that story. There is so much I could pull from that story that I love, particularly collecting the sports nutrition with one lens in your glasses.
I don't want to be a downer though. I wonder if they haven't technically done the George Fisher round, if they went
down on the road. Yeah. I wasn't going to pull that out, Gary. I was going to gloss over that and focus on the good parts of the story. Debbie Downer has just come in. Jez, I love it. Keep going. Thank you so much for your story for Tea and Trails.
Yeah, I love it. We've got some winners, 2 winners from our Silver Head Torch competition. I've got the video footage, video evidence if you want me to.
Remind me, Gary, what did they have to do for this competition? What were the deeds?
Well, they had to be part of our group, share the Facebook post, and then basically tell us what song they would choose if they had to choose one for their Instagram story music. And it was super popular. I think it was about 10,000 people it reached. We didn't get 10,000 entries. Imagine trying to do the admin for all that.
Oh, you should take the week off, Gary. I'm not sure we could even record a podcast.
But yeah, thanks so much for everybody to get involved. To reach that many Facebook accounts, that shows there's been a lot of sharing and people taking part in the competition. So yeah, I appreciate it. I'm sure the guys over at Silver appreciate it too. But our winners are, and these are 2 songs actually I've never heard of. So this is really interesting. Paul Anderson was the first out of the hat, and he went with Twin Atlantic, Heart and Soul. Were you familiar with that song before today?
Gary, you know I'm a Disney Classics girl, so I'm not going to know any of these songs.
And our second winner was Charlotte Doherty, Ways to Go, Group Love.
Group Love. Oh, I say. You guys, it might take us a little time because we need to not only them to get the head torches to Charlotte and Paul. Gary's very good at admin. He'll get those to you guys ASAP, and then we look forward to having a picture of you guys in the head torches, and then we'll put you on Instagram with your songs, and everyone can feel very jealous that they didn't win, but very pleased that your roads will be well lit by silver. I'm looking forward to trying. I haven't tried my silver head torch. I've got a conundrum. I've got one old Petzl head torch, because I'm not taking the spine head torch on the top. I think people would laugh me off the mountain. I've got my old Petzl head torch, and I've got my brand new silver head torch. Who wears what? Bryn and I. Who gets the nice new head torch? Who gets one with a dodgy battery and the light that slightly flickers? I think we all know the way that's going, don't we? Anyway, you don't need to make that decision, Charlotte and Paul. You guys are winners. Yeah, slide into our DMs, and we'll get those head torches sent out to you ASAP.
We have another competition too. Normally we give a little bit of time to breathe between competitions, but we've got quite a few prizes backlogged.
Go. We got a backlog here. We got a flush.
Well, it was super generous. Bourneside Farm Holiday Cottages got involved as a Patreon partner, and they also offered a mega super generous prize for this week's competition. £150 voucher is up for grabs, which is loads of money. They're not a big national business. They're a small business, people who support the podcast. So yeah, I'm blown away by that generosity. And what you need to do is classic, be part of the Tea and Trails Facebook group.
Who would want to be? It's just a hub of joy. And there's not the questions of like, my knee is facing backwards, what should I do? Because as soon as there's that sort of thing, I delete. It's good stuff. There's other places for that, isn't there? There's other places for Dr. Google.
We should do because people ask about our YouTube channel, which we haven't really shared much, but maybe we should do a YouTube channel subscribe for one of the competitions in the future. But anyway, that's confusing things. So what you need to do for this competition is be part of the Tea and Trails Facebook group, like and share this competition post, and then comment below saying which cottage you would stay at if you won the £150 voucher. So yeah, you need to pop over to www.fawnside.co.uk to check out one of their, I think it's 4 cottages they've got on site. Check them out and then comment below with which one you would like to stay at. I've checked them out, and to be honest, I've had to curb Gary, because he's gone through every cottage, and he's like, well, I would stay at this one for this one, and I'd stay at that one. I'm like, Gary, you sort of like losing the point of the competition here. And also you can't win because can't win.
No, you're a co-host, Gary, of a national newsmaking podcast. One
winner will be picked at random on the 9th of July, and we'll announce the winner on episode 29. I think it's 29. If it's not 29, it's the episode after the 9th of July. We'll see how that pans out.
If you understand all that, you win a mini metro, as my mum used to say. If you didn't understand all that, just pop over to Facebook. There'll be a post on there by the time this
I saw a mini metro the other day, and it was like a blast from the past.
A mini metro. My granny and grandpa had a beige mini metro. We've been quite upbeat this week, Gary, haven't we? We've not it's been noted you had a little emotion moment at the beginning, but
I held it together.
You held it. You are such a hero. Do you want to feel just end on a fluffy pillow?
Oh yes,
a pillow and a warm blanket.
We've got quite a few 5-star reviews, which is always lovely to see. I think we put a request out there, didn't we? And
no,
you asked people responded, so thank you so much. But first one to share is the Lizzie family. And they said the band is back together. Loving this podcast, Eddie and Gary. Great format, a friendly banter, nerdy training stuff, and a relaxed chat with interesting guests. What more do we need from a podcast?
What more do you need? Emoji. Nudity? I don't know. What else can we offer in this podcast, Gary?
That'll be too much. People are only human, Eddie.
Too much. It would be too much. We don't need any of that. I've had 3 children. It's safe. A polar neck is very high zip. That's all we need. Let's have a look. Can I scroll down and choose?
Yeah, do Terry's.
Terry. Oh gosh, double scroll, Terry. Fantastic podcast with fantastic guests and filthy hosts. There we go. I'd recently listened to all the backdated podcasts, and my working day now has a serious void accompanied by a painfully long wait each week for the next release. I hear you. Gary and Eddie have kept me company whilst cleaning windows here in the glorious Lower Pennines for the last 3 weeks, and 25 episodes have just flown by. Terry, you must know more about me and Gary than our husband and wives. Their witty and sometimes fruity banter makes for some wonderful, light-hearted listening. Add to this some of the best guests and a quick brew with the coaches. You have all the ingredients you need for one, if not the best running podcast available. I've always been very active over the years, and running has always been a complementary training partner throughout. But after a difficult few years, everything slowed down and even put on hold at times. I then decided to start things up again. New Strava, new mojo, new shoes. I love this. And running gradually became my number one choice. I have still to run an official event, but in both episodes 24 and 25, the calling was clear. Running out of time passes right by my back door, and there was no way I could not do this. So today, thanks to these two lovely people, that's you and I, Gary, I've signed up to the Green Runners and to leg 134 of Running Out of Time. Thank you both for being the motivation required and allowing me to take the baton with fearless aplomb. Oh, I love that. You guys are simply the best. Terry, we should. That again, we often say about things on a t-shirt. I take the baton with fearless aplomb. Swish the hair. Terry.
Oh, well done, Terry.
Let us know if you've done the leg. Well done. If you're not yet to do it, good luck. Let us know how it goes. And thank you so much for taking the time to leave the review. Okay, this week, deep breaths. What's the plan?
I'm not going to swear, but I'm
Talk to your
trying to
coach.
hold.
Talk to your coach. Let's have a quick 5 minutes and work out this week together, okay? Sometimes that's what you need.
Well, on the plan is 6 times 1K. I'm not too sure of the recovery. It'll be at that zone 4, 5K pace, whatever. And then there is the hill session, which I didn't do. I really like the sound of it more than what the hill session is this week. So I've got more chance of doing this one. The 4, 2, 1, 30 seconds on the hills. Fingers crossed I get at least one of those done. I'd really like to get down to the gym twice if possible. Also, the long run is sorted because we are off to the lakes on Sunday and Monday. So we're having a cheeky little Sunday night stopover. And we're going to do 2 Lakeland 100 recce's. There's about 5 of us going over there.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
I know. I don't need to do a Lakeland 100 recce. So my selfish side is thinking about Dragon's Back race and elevation and maybe some striding edge and swirl edge loops to have some kind of exposure. But the group, I'd have much more pleasant time if I stuck with the group. So what we're going to do, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't need to worry about my long runs and elevation at least. So they're the sessions. A few strides, easy runs in between that. Yeah, just trying to keep it together. I'm going to give myself some grace. Like we said earlier, if I can do 60 mile a week from now until Lakeland 100, I'm not too sure what's going to happen after Dragon's Back. That's more than enough. I'm going to try and be nice to myself, be kind to myself. And if I have to readjust my goals for race day, then so be it. Trying to be positive. What about yourself?
Whoa, gosh, okay. You didn't need me at all. You're done. You're...
Well, what do you think, though, actually? Serious. This my little idea, and I'm not putting it into play yet, I'm trying to somehow work my training around Lisa's shit.
Absolutely. I think your problem is you put the training first, whereas what I like to do is look at the space I have and then what I'm going to put in there. So rather than trying to fit something in, round peg, square hole, all that, I would prefer to do it the other way and like work out the time slots and what will fit in there as well.
Yeah, spot on, actually. That's the first thing I do think about is the training.
Yeah. Man, woman. There we go.
I'm just a really bad organizer. We've got this calendar at home I got all of Lisa's shifts on there, all of where we're going to be, what we're going to do. And even this weekend, I've not put on my Sunday, Monday trip to the lakes. I'm terrible.
Oh no. You get away with that. Jeez. Yeah. And I find my diary is absolutely, and I'm working, a week ahead and looking where I work out well. And then you do, Gary, you just have to be flexible. And if it doesn't work and you have to change it, you have to change it, don't you? And do it with good grace, which sometimes is not brilliant at
But
doing.
I'm still in this whole process of how many years can I try and push myself? And maybe I do just transition into these races and more of adventures and big, good, lovely days out instead of crying for the last 30 miles of a 100-miler, because
I think however you approach 100 mile, you're going to cry for the last 30 miles of it, aren't you? If you're doing it for pleasure or not. But yeah, let's see how this week goes. I think you've turned your headspace round already. You don't need me. You got this. I'm not sure I've got this next few weeks. So one of my children actually breaks up for summer holidays at the end of this week and has 10 weeks holiday. What in the blazes is going on
university
there?
Student. That's wild.
Gosh, 10 weeks of holiday. The other two then break up the week after, 9 weeks of summer holiday. Anyway, so yeah, Bryn and I are both now training for this quite large race. Bryn works a lot of hours. And so he needs to be, like, the weekends have to be bigger for him. So I have to work that out. Like, here we go, Gary, fit in the hours of what we're going to do, when we're going to do it. I'm not so worried. Like, I need Bryn to be as fit as he can be. So, and I've had, I can sort of back off a little bit and let him, he needs to do have a bit more, the longer runs and stuff. If I don't run more than 3 or 4 hours before it, that's fine. I know that I'll be fine. I've done enough of it, and he needs to have some longer days and the climbing.
How's he feeling?
Just the other weekend, he was like, we need to, okay, let's get the profile up. It's basically 7 big climbs of about between 1,000 and 1,400. That's basically the race. And then the descending off those climbs. Yeah. We're not so worried about the climbs because we can go out and it's the descending of smashing the legs up. So I've just been working out like how we're going to do that, how we're going to juggle the next 2 months of trying to get, without getting a divorce, of how we're going to, both get stuff, both feel like we're both training and looking after the kids. And I'm switching my focus now from the running, did a lot of running, didn't have poles. And this morning went out pole strain. Oh my God, it feels so good. And I was like hiking bits that the last couple of months have been like, you must run this. And now I'm like, no, I can hike. Hooray. Working on my hiking. So I'm going to switch my focus from kilometers or miles on my Strava to climbing meters. So still second week post a big race effort. So this week I'm just going to hike a lot. I got hot today, Gary. I started sweating. I was like, how's the body going to react to that? Felt okay. Yeah, it felt okay. And just
your core temperature will be slightly elevated still.
Yeah, I think so. I just took it. I wore my hat, on the draft, took lots of water, just kept the exertion really low. And so I'll do that all this week. I'm going to keep very low exertion and just go for climbing. Lots of nice climbing. But it felt fine going up, and then coming down, my quads are still quite stiff. I really did one on my quads. Still quite stiff. Like I felt like I was, like 50, 60 miles into a race when you start going downhill and your legs start feeling a bit clunky, a bit like, ooh. Yeah. So they felt like that. So I was like, oof, need a massage. But I'm looking forward to now. I love this change of training focus. It's definitely something I'm going to do forever now. I'm not going to do the same sort of race twice in a row. Love the change of focus. And we all know I love a hike. Oh my God. Couldn't quite put a flask of tea in my Salomon backpack, but where there's a will, there's a way.
I really fancied, what I said about the rat race, the wall race, finishing at the quayside, especially with this whole kind of traveling for races and stuff like that. I just thought, that's really, logistically for me as a northerner, that's a pretty good race.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, put it on the bucket list.
Northern Traverse, the wall, that kind of thing, bringing me back to the east.
Well, after Northern Traverse, you're taking me straight home to yours, aren't you? Straight home on the mic.
VIP.
So be like, I'll take you home, Eddie. I'll get you a cup of tea, but we're getting the mics out. My God, imagine that. 2 hours post-race for Eddie.
Oh.
People wouldn't be, but we'd have to give a warning.
It's like a 2-hour drive, I think, from Robin Hood's Bay.
We could record on the drive.
Oh, who's that guy who does that American talk show? Carpool. What's his name?
Oh, yeah, James Corden. We could do it live. We can sing. People love that. Get the Disney classics on.
Instead of I've got his name again, we're like Adele and whatever his name is, Corden, be Gary and Eddie.
Yeah, I look like Adele. There's a lot of similar qualities to our manicured face.
I've noticed I've got the timer going.
Oh, geez.
We've been chatting less for the whole show than what we did our intro last week.
Oh, okay, that's good because Gary really worries I talk too much. Last week,
I don't worry at all about that.
You do. You were like, Eddie, that was so long. You went on and on and on.
That's terrible. Don't say that.
Under the
Anyway.
bus.
What is that then? There is another show in the bank. Thanks for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. And if you did, please take a look at Patreon. It really is the best way to support the show. Thanks to all the partners and patrons, new and old. Be kind to future self. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share.
Stay safe on the trails. Run wise. Run well. Don't overdo it. If you're listening to this during a race, slow down a little bit. Take in the view. Make sure you keep drinking. Don't overheat. Go and make yourself a brew. My name is Eddie Sutton.
And I'm Gary Quitz.
And that was episode 27 of Tea and Trails.